All right, we are going to get this meeting started. This is
All right.
the business meeting for the Oregon State Parks and Recreation Commission. Thank you all for being here today. We had a really awesome tour yesterday morning, despite some fog and sprinkles of Fogarty State Park and Glenadin and Beverly Beach State Park. So really grateful to the staff for showing us these beautiful resources and other key issues going on in the state parks and where we can look at pay some more attention to as a commission. So with that, I think we'll get started on introductions. Let's start at this end of the table with Commissioner Grasty.
I'm Steve Grasty, and I'm a commissioner, and I'm from the east side of the state.
My name is Joel Conder, and I'm also a commissioner and also from the east.
Vicki Berger, Commissioner from the Salem area.
Liz Hill from Glide.
Good morning, Lisa Assumption, Director of Oregon Parks and Recreation Department.
Good morning. My name's Betty Izumi, and I'm from the Portland area.
I am Commissioner Doug Durr, and I am from Clatsop County.
Good morning, Commissioner Melissa Cribbins from Coos Bay.
Great. So next. Oh, I'm so sorry. Forgetting you all morning. Go ahead, AAG.
Unnecessary, but I'm Steve Shipsey and I'm counsel to the commission.
All right. Now we'll move on to next item on our agenda, which is approval of the June minutes. Can I get a
So,
motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of June 12th and the Zoom meeting of July 30th. If
Oh,
it's
that's
appropriate to
right.
put them
Yes.
together.
Doing both.
Yep.
Madam Chair, I'll second.
Okay, I have a second for a motion to approve the June 11th commission meeting minutes as well as the June 30th Zoom minutes. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. Hearing none, it passes. Next, both pass. Next up, we have the approval of the September 20, today's agenda. There is one change to the agenda on item 4B, release of deed restrictions, Jackson County owned land. That's listed as action, and today it's actually just going to be information. So I think that is the only change to the agenda. If I can get a motion, we can move forward on.
Move approval of the agenda as amended.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Dewar with the second. All those in favor of approving today's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing none, passes. Next, we get to move on to our favorite part of the agenda, which is public comment. We all actually really do like this part. So, but first, I want to welcome Lincoln County Commissioner Katie Jacobson, who is so graciously sharing her community with us and state parks today for this meeting. Thank you for being here. And yeah, I don't know if you wanted to say a few words.
I do. Do I have to push this? Don't push it. Okay. All right.
Keep it close.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for inviting me here, Cherry Hill commissioners and staff. I'm Katie Jacobson. I'm one of the county commissioners here in Lincoln County. On behalf of the entire Lincoln County Board of Commissioners, I just want to say thank you for being here and coming into our community, traveling here to learn about us. We really appreciate all of your OPRD staff, local staff, as well as your director and executive staff, and just the accessibility that we have to all of them and the relationship that we have with OPRD, I think is quite special compared to maybe some other agencies we work with that we don't quite feel like we have that accessibility. So thank you again to all of your staff, and thank you to all of you for coming here. We appreciate you taking the opportunity yesterday to learn more about our community, like sort of the unique challenges we have with state parks here. I think you had sort of a riprap tour yesterday, which is one of the unique coastal challenges that all coastal counties face, especially now with increased climate change pressures and global warming. We expect to see more of those requests in the future. A few things I just wanted to share about our county that might be relevant as you think about our area. Our largest identified earned income sector, so the sector that we know what it is actually payment transfers. So it's not tourism, it's payment transfers, which is people moving here and bringing their investments with them. Mostly this is the retiree community, but it could be anybody. So that's our biggest sector. Our second is actually commercial fishing, and our third is tourism. We also know from relevant research that the commercial fishing industry and tourism are actually tied together because many people come here wanting to experience a working waterfront, kind of the maritime culture, and have access to local seafood. We also have a growing identified sector, which is marine science and research, mostly taking place at the OSU Hatfield Marine Science Center and the 7 different agencies that call that facility home. We're also on the front lines of climate change, as we have a really unique process here on the Oregon coast called upwelling, which brings really old, nutrient-rich, dense water up the coastline that feeds primary production and phytoplankton. However, that water, as it comes up the coastline, is about 75 to 100 years old. And so if you think about what was happening with fixing carbon in the ocean 75 to 100 years ago, that water is coming up in a more acidic state than it has been in the past. So we're already seeing these impacts on some of our fish and shellfish species on the Oregon coast, as well as impacts to our coastal communities, such as wildfire. We had a major wildfire in 2020, along with many other communities in the state. We've had several drought declarations in the last 5 years, which was something our county council that had been with us for 35 years didn't even know how to do, a drought declaration, because it was not something our county had ever really done. So we are definitely experiencing those things. I think probably most of the coast and state are, but these are the things that we are dealing with here as a county. That's all I really had for opening comments. Again, just a warm welcome and thank you for coming here, and happy to take any questions or anything like that.
Thank you so much for being here and for your wealth of knowledge and sharing that with us. We had a great dinner last night and learned quite a bit about Lincoln County and the unique challenges that you face. So.
I did hear that a mayor once came and like sang and had a guitar, so I'm sorry I wasn't able to provide that for you.
Oh, you weren't there, but yeah. But he did,
With more warning.
he didn't provide that spectacular moonset this morning.
Yeah,
That was some moon over the
Yeah.
ocean.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for making time for dinner last night too.
Hey, moving on to public comments. We typically keep comments to just 3 minutes. So there's going to be a timer up on the screen for those that are on Zoom to look at, as well as anybody who's in person. And I'll give you a polite nod warning when you've passed that time. So I think first up, well, Katie, I actually don't have the list of folks who are here in person.
There's
Nobody here. in
nobody
person?
here in person.
Okay. So then first up I have.
You're not signed up for it?
Okay, that's what I
know. Just double
if you're sure. First up, we have Roger Strauss.
And I will give you a moment I will allow you to talk and then I will start the so you need to unmute. Okay, Roger, you are now able to talk and I will start the timer.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Roger Strauss, 1149 12th Street Southeast in Bandon. I'm here today as president of the Coquille River Lighthouse Keepers Foundation. The Coquille River Lighthouse is not just a historic structure. To this day, it stands as a symbol of the perseverance and resilience of the people of Bandon and an icon for this part of our great state. On February 29th, 1896, it was first illuminated and served for years as a welcome beacon for weary sailors looking for respite from the tumultuous Pacific. After it was decommissioned in 1939, it was left to deteriorate and at times felt like the lonely tower stood as a reflection of the many challenges our community faced. As a parallel to the enduring spirit of the people of Bandon, the lighthouse was brought back from the brink through the joint efforts of the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, the Coquille River Lighthouse Keepers, and the community. In 2011, the last restoration project occurred, and the lighthouse once again shined as an example of what people and their government can accomplish when working together. Since then, the lighthouse has once again fallen victim to the ravages of the marine environment it inhabits. The tower has been closed to the public since 2014, and the exterior masonry has begun to crumble, the iron cupola rust, the paint fade and flake. The lighthouse requires some help so that it may continue to endure as that steadfast representation of not just where we came from, but also where we aspire. Since 1999, the Cocoa River Lighthouse Keepers Foundation has been raising funds to help the state of Oregon with this restoration project. We assisted with the 2007-2008 project that repainted the lighthouse by providing grant funds we obtained to the state. 2011, a project was done to replace the windows. The Lighthouse Keepers got grant funding, which it turned over to the state to help fund that project. We're an active organization that assisted at state before and is ready and able to assist today and in the future. We have a bill of about $200,000 and pledges for another $100,000 already. We can fundraise and write and obtain grants. In 2024, we successfully applied for and received a grant to modernize our website. We stand ready to be an active partner in the restoration project. The state of Oregon has commissioned a historic structure report that was sent to Oregon Parks and Recreation Department on September 2nd, 2021, that contains all of the information necessary to do this restoration. The state of Oregon Parks and Recreation Department is leasing the lighthouse. The state has possession, has the report of what needs to be done, and it is Oregon Parks and Recreation that needs to initiate this project. Our ask is that the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department continue to live up to its mission to provide and protect the sentinel of our community, and not to let the progress we have made so far be completely lost, as we stand ready to provide partnership and support as this worthy effort moves forward. Thank you very much, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Strauss. We appreciate your comments today. Moving on to our next comments from Philip Johnson.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Philip Johnson. I'm the Shoreline and Land Use Manager for the Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. In light of all your discussion yesterday, I wanted to let you know that as of next week, Oregon Shores, together with the Surfrider Foundation, are launching a long-term campaign we're calling Oregon Beaches Forever, which is intended to address what's sometimes called the coastal squeeze, the kinds of things you were discussing yesterday with sea level rise and increased storm surges coming up against human infrastructure. This is a long-term effort because there are choices that go beyond the stark choice discussed yesterday between losing the beaches or having houses fall on the beach, but that requires the kinds of comprehensive policy that we're actually just not ready for before we educate ourselves on the possibilities. So our effort will be over time to educate ourselves along with everyone else about the possibilities for a comprehensive solution. I would invite all of you to join the webinar, the series of webinars we'll be conducting, the first of which is next Thursday, September 26th, with none other than Kevin Herkamp and his counterpart at DLCD. I would just in general like to issue a plea for a special focus on the coast. Again, for all the reasons that you heard about yesterday, I fully understand the budget constraints. I fully understand that you're responsible for parks throughout the state, but you do have a special role on the coast, managing not just the shoreline itself, but because your decisions there affect the coastal shorelands. I would urge you to do everything you can to provide the capacity to get that rulemaking process that was discussed yesterday going. That won't get us all the way to a comprehensive solution, but at least will be an important interim step. I would urge you to find capacity to support the littoral cell study that was mentioned yesterday. And that in turn should be a step towards something I've testified about before, which is the need to do a comprehensive study of climate vulnerabilities and potentials for adaptation on the coast, such as has been done by the park systems in Washington and California. You badly need that. And that in turn can lead to the comprehensive or the full review of the Oregon Shore policies, which again was discussed yesterday. So in general, I'd urge you to make every possible priority on finding the capacity to truly do your own comprehensive analysis of the position of state parks, including the beaches on the shoreline, and start toward long-term solutions. If I've got one other moment to just briefly say something. Yesterday, there was a lot of discussion about relocating structures as one alternative to losing, to riprap and losing the shoreline. All the discussion is in terms of cost benefit to the landowner, not actually to the public. I don't like to think about the coast in monetary terms. I think of it as habitat. I think of it as, solitude. I think of it as
Johnson, we're
recreation.
gonna have to cut you off.
Okay.
Sorry, over the time limit,
Fair
but
enough.
we do appreciate your comments about the drones, and as well as your work volunteering on the drone working group. So we really appreciate all the work that you put into that and the thoughtful comments around that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Moving on to our next person, we have Joe Liebezeit. Did I say that correctly? I'm sorry if I butchered your last name.
Do you hear me?
Speak up a little bit louder.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, am I low?
Nope, we can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, you got my last name right. Okay, here we go. Chair Hill and Commissioners and Director Assumption, my name is Joe Liebezeit, Assistant Director of Statewide Conservation for Bird Alliance of Oregon, representing 12,000 members. I also serve on the Ocean Policy Advisory Council, representing statewide conservation. Today, I'll be providing testimony regarding the drone process you heard about yesterday, as well as State Parks investments in managing our ocean shore rocky habitats. Regarding the drone process, first off, I'll say that I was on the drone working group that helped develop the criteria for takeoff and landing zones that was described yesterday. And I want to thank Parks for pausing the previous Rules Advisory Committee and forming the work group to include a fuller range of interests in the process. The working group worked constructively to hammer out criteria. However, there were some points that we at Bird Alliance were reluctant to concede that I'd like to elaborate so you have broader context about your decisions you'll be making. First, the Commission should consider recommending both a permit system and a required fee for drone permits to cover public costs associated with expected increased enforcement needs as the new drone rules come into effect. A permit fee came up repeatedly as a recommendation by working group members, but park staff declined to consider such requests. Second, while we're happy to see Parks recommending public input on drone takeoff and landing zones as part of an adaptive management process, we recommend the Commission ask staff to develop a detailed adaptive management strategy plan that will be available for public review prior to drone rules being finalized. Third, we recommend the Commission require the staff to monitor the effectiveness of the rules that will come out of this process and keep close track of drone violations. And within 2 years of drone rules coming to effect, staff should provide a report to the Commission with the findings. If a growing number of wildlife and park users have been negatively impacted by illegal drone use, then the adaptive management process should kick in and stronger drone restrictions should be considered widely. I also want to quickly touch on Oregon's iconic rocky habitats, which cover 40% of our coastline and are incredibly important for wildlife and for responsible recreation use. In the past couple of years, Oregon adopted an updated Rocky Habitat Management Strategy, Chapter 3 of the Territorial Sea Plan. This was needed because of exponentially increasing visitor use and associated human disturbance, including drone use, and other factors like increasing heat stress events in our intertidal zone. As part of this process, 8 new rocky habitat sites were designated with stronger protections. Historically, parks played a strong role in management and public engagement on our rocky shores. Example, they annually hosted jointly with BLM Rocky Shore Stewardship trainings. However, in recent years, parks engagement has decreased. We urge the Commission to place a higher priority on state parks management efforts in our rocky shores. After all, the agency has statutory authority for managing Oregon's ocean shore recreation area. I'd be interested in further discussions with the Commission and staff on these issues. Thanks again for your consideration.
Thank you. Next up, we have Angela Whitlock.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for giving me a little bit of time with you this morning. My name is Angela Whitlock, and I am the Marine Program Coordinator with North Coast Land Conservancy. We are an environmental nonprofit based in Seaside, Oregon, and I am a full-time coastal resident here in Seaside as well. I'd like to just say I loved all of Joe Liebezeit's comments. I am behind everything he said 100%. So my professional life and my personal life are focused on marine protected areas and the newly designated Rocky Habitat areas. I have been involved for many years in the new Rocky Habitat designations. These are amazing biodiverse habitats that the health of each creature in these sensitive areas is dependent upon the health of each and every other creature in these areas. And it is no secret that increased visitation has applied increased pressure to these sensitive habitats. So as a full-time coastal resident, I can tell you that drones are a big issue. I have seen bird disturbance. I have seen nesting disturbance. I have seen people use drones to they don't necessarily understand that they're causing harm, but there are those too who do understand that they're causing harm. And I have seen harassment issues happening over and over again, people harassing nesting birds, people harassing herds of elk, which can end up leading to kind of a dangerous situation, as you can all imagine. This isn't sustainable for our Rocky habitats, and this isn't sustainable behavior for our wildlife populations. So if you could just imagine sitting in your own home at your dinner table trying to feed your family and having a drone buzzing over your head, or sitting in your front room with your family trying to visit with some neighbors or some friends and having drones buzzing around your head at all times, or trying to sleep at night and having a drone buzzing around in your bedroom, that is what it's like for these wildlife populations when they're trying to live their lives. It's very uncomfortable and not sustainable. Recently, I was visiting Great Falls State Park, and I saw a sign that said no drone usage. And I think this is exactly what we need in our Rocky habitat areas. So what I'm asking the state parks to do is to prioritize management of the Rocky habitat areas so that these areas can be enjoyed by the public without causing damage to the very sensitive habitats and to the wildlife that lives there. I personally enjoy getting out on the beach myself to unplug and get away from screens and technology. And it is so disturbing to me as a public user of the beach to have a drone buzzing over my head when I'm trying to just enjoy nature. So that is my very personal take on it. And I'm just really hoping you'll take that into consideration. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Whitlock. Next,
Chair Hill, Dennis Griffith is not online.
Dennis White.
Dennis White, sorry.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, next up, we've got Connie Griffiths then.
Connie, you will need to unmute.
We still can't hear you if you're trying to speak to us.
Hello?
Oh, now we can hear you. Great.
Oh, cool. This is Connie Griffiths, and I'm Miss Connie's Children's Foundation. I always tell you guys I'm a human rights activist bitch. I've had a lot of time over there on this coast. So last year I retired out some. I'm back in Portland, but I spent several years in your capital. I managed to look at it, the whole state. I work on your disaster preparedness committee. So I was over there for the Newport mock, and that came out in Nehalem. I spent time over on the beaches and then walking in the parks and enjoying that. I fell back to Silver Creek Falls and walked several of them. And between my surgeries, I've had multiple. And the Astoria, the military base is back up. I feel safe to come back in here and continue my work here in preparation for whatever faces Oregon with the wildfires, because it was the 220 wildfires that moved me. And I just want you to know that I've spent a decade more watchdogging you guys, and I spent a lifetime in the Oregon parks. And if I can be of any service ever to help you to build another park, another bridge, another amphitheater, I tell you, I'm just pleased that in everything that we have done, And I want to commend all of you on the work for the state of Oregon that we maintain these parks and we've kept them clean. And the vandalism and the cleanup and the maps, we're getting them back up in the state. I just want you to know it is a job that is well taken and that many people are invested. And a lot of us are just, we live here and Oregon clean. And I didn't know it any other way. And, you know, and wildfires, we all want to bring back Smokey Bear. You know, these people got to pay attention. That was our number one livelihood. We're not going to get lumber back overnight. We lost 1 million acres, 220, and we just lost 2 million acres in 224. We've got to address how we're going to handle our forests, our ecological. Over on the coast, we have contamination of our shellfish, our lobster, and that's the leakage of a nuclear plant off Japan that comes in on our waters. There's no starfish. I'm offended. And I'm concerned about the whales. You know, I can't give my family, my children, grandchildren, the same ocean and the safety and the security. Like the wildlife, I'm offended. You're putting in on everything that I believe in. You know, when I walk on the beach, I want my privacy. I don't want a drone in my face. You know, it's things that we're going to have to deal with between AI and living human beings. And we're going to have to draw these lines, our borders.
Thank you,
And
Ms.
I'm here to
Griffith.
protect you. I'm here to protect you in every way I can.
Thank you. And thank
I'm
you
done.
for caring about so many issues and for your service. Thank you. All right, moving on
You're
to
welcome.
Ann Velisis. Please tell me I got that right.
Yes, you did. Good morning,
Oh, thank goodness.
Commission members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Ann Velisis. I'm president of the Kalmiopsis Audubon Society. Our group has about 400 members down on the South Coast in Curry County who visit state parks every day. So we very much appreciate and value OPRD and your staff's work to steward our parks. I really want to express appreciation for the commissioner who asked staff at yesterday's drone workshop, do you have any actual data to show how park users who are not drone users regard drones, regard adding drone use to our parks? If you recall, the answer was no. And I want to underscore that this is a hugely important and perhaps the most fundamentally important question for this whole drone policy rulemaking process that has not yet been answered. And so I would encourage this commission to please ask your department staff to get you that basic information before you need to make any decisions, so that all of us who care about parks can feel that the OPRD commission and department is doing its due diligence in setting such a consequential policy moving forward. We heard from staff yesterday that drone use has been growing exponentially, and so getting this policy right is very important because I'm concerned that park by park adaptive management will not be as easy as staff may portray. The metaphor of Pandora's box comes to my mind. It was stated repeatedly by staff that the legislature required OPRD to protect park resources while also allowing for drone use. And the word balance was used a lot. But that does not mean that you have to accommodate drone takeoffs and landings in every park, as the sample maps suggest. I've reviewed the drone policies in all 50 state park systems, and the majority are very restrictive for purposes of protecting public safety, traditional recreational experiences in parks, and wildlife. Some states allow drone use in just a few parks within their whole system to make the accommodation. Speaking of balance also, I have to say I was concerned yesterday that staff seemed to diminish comments made by individuals who used a comment form that Portland Audubon, now Bird Alliance of Oregon, shared with its members, who I am sure, like ours, truly and deeply care about what will happen in our state parks with drones, even though they cannot track or attend all of these kinds of meetings. Earlier in this drone rulemaking process, When we became aware that out-of-state drone user groups had organized to submit hundreds of form letter comments, hoping to secure a permissive drone policy in Oregon that they hoped could influence other states, we were told that all comments counted. And so honestly, yesterday's description of the Portland Audubon comments to me seemed biased.
Thank you, Ms. Velisis. We appreciate your comments. I think that wraps up our public comment unless I'm missing anybody.
We have one additional comment, but it's on a specific agenda item. So it's on the local government grants when we get to that agenda item. And it's not on your.
Can we go ahead and do that right now? The public comment?
We generally give them the option if they want to do it now or when the item comes up. Totally up to you.
We can shift into it during the grants. Okay, so moving on. We're on agenda item number 3, budget. Thank you, Katie, for navigating that.
Oh, stopwatch.
Yeah, not gonna miss it.
Hey. Good morning, Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Rebecca Jasso. I'm the Financial Services Director for Oregon Parks and Recreation Department.
Could you speak up a little bit? We're having a hard time hearing you.
I feel like it's like right, is that better?
Little closer, eat it like
You have
in
the
your.
softest voice ever.
Yeah.
Same as Director Sumption. Okay, do you want me to start over? Am I good to?
You're
just-
good to keep going.
Okay. So I'm here today to, for agenda item 3A, budget update and the September lottery forecast. This is informational only. So the September lottery forecast was released on August 28th. It does reflect an additional decrease. This is like right in my line of sight. It shows a decrease from our prior forecast of about $47,000, just a little bit over 47,000. However, since the close of session, the forecast has actually increased about $700,000. So while it's going down very slowly and is not below where we were at the close of session. The 23-25 budget was built on a forecast of 137.5 million. And as of the September forecast, we're at 138.18 million. So we're still a little bit higher. The chart that was on the brief that you received does show for 25-27 a decrease of about 1.1 million. We do have one more lottery forecast coming out in November prior to the governor's recommended budget being published. That will have an impact. Our 25-27 budget was submitted to DAS on time by August 30th, and we are currently working with the Department of Administrative Services Chief Financial Office on the governor's recommended budget. So once we kind of know more where that direction is going and it's been published, we'll come back and we'll share that information with you. So any questions that I can answer?
Commissioner Berger?
It was, our chair was out of town and I was honored to
Yes,
sign
thank
that
you so much.
submission. And I thought, I ought to read it. 181 pages on a phone is a little tricky.
Whoa, yes.
But I did look through it and it's excess is what it is of administrative work for this budget. This is not a criticism of you. This is a criticism of the budget process in the state that it should take that much for a budget submission. So don't take that as criticism of this agency, but take it to the governor. If I could personally, I probably will. And whoever asked for that much granular detail that then you're now sitting and going through line by line, that's not how I want my staff spending their time, but I know you have to do it, and I want you to know how much I appreciate you doing it.
Thank you. We did spend a lot of time to make sure that we were telling our story, because we do have a big story to tell this time around, when it comes to revenue. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions for Rebecca? Wonderful. Easy enough.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 4A. Mount Pisgah timber rights.
Good morning, Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission. I'm Jennifer Elson. I'm in Real Estate Services at Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. It's better. And I'm here today to talk about timber rights at Mount Pisgah. In 1973, ODOT's Park and Recreation Division acquired a 2,244 acre property known as Mount Pisgah Regional Park and immediately gave it to Lane County on a 99-year lease for development and management. The park is currently named Howard Buford Recreation Area. The state held back 50% of the timber value at the time, and that was done because the property was being developed with a grant from Land and Water Conservation Fund, and any income from timber harvested during the development of the park needed to be used to reduce the total cost of that project. If there was income that caused state expense to fall below half of total project costs, Bureau of Outdoor Recreation would need to be reimbursed. With the development of the park having been complete for some time now, the requirement to reimburse the Bureau of Outdoor Recreation has long passed. Staff recommends commission approval for OPRD to accept any and all timber rights ODOT holds in Howard Buford Recreation Area, formerly known as Mount Pisgah, and to transfer any and all timber rights to Lane County. As you prepare to vote, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments?
What
Go ahead, Commissioner Berger.
Bureau of Outdoor Recreation? Is that us? Who is that? That's the federal?
It's a federal agency.
It still exists? Okay.
Predecessor to national parks.
The predecessor, okay.
Yes,
I'm
sorry.
just getting the language right. Okay, thank you.
A lot happens in 99 years.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. So, so we're being asked to consider transferring timber rights to Lane County for the duration of the lease or in perpetuity,
In perpetuity.
which could live beyond a 99-year lease, hypothetically speaking.
So the 99-year lease is no longer in place. The park property has been
It
transferred
has
to.
fully transferred.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
yes, yes.
Pardon me.
Yeah. And actually, the ask is for approval to accept any and all timber rights ODOT holds.
Right.
Right, and then transfer to Lane County.
Right.
Yes.
right. And we handle this exclusively though as successor to that responsibility within ODOT, or do we bring the same question to ODOT?
Sorry, I missed the first part.
Because we're the successor to that part of ODOT at OPRD.
Correct.
So do we have the sole discretion, I guess is my question, or do we have to bring this to ODOT for some review as well?
If I may,
Yeah,
for the
yes, go
record,
ahead.
Lab Whitcomb, Real Estate Services, OPRD. What is happening there since we split with ODOT?
Right.
I personally believe that we hold title to this as OPRD, having taken title as ODOT Parks and Rec Division. But what they have done with us in the past is quit claim all of our property to
Right,
us.
right.
So just to keep this clean and to keep a nice paper trail behind it, so people in Jen and my position in 20 years don't go, what happened here?
Right.
We're just trying to keep that same consistent paper trail.
Right.
And ODOT is willing to quit claim this to us. So
Okay.
We're
Yeah.
asking to be able to accept. it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for entertaining those technical questions. Appreciate it.
So What you're asking for and what I move is commission approval for OPRD to accept in any and all timber rights ODOT holds to Howard Buford Recreation Area and transfer any and all timber rights to Lane County. Is that what we're at? Is that what we're moving?
Yes.
That's what I move.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Berger. We have a motion from Commissioner Berger. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Grasty. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing none, motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, agenda item 4B, which is an information item. This is with Alice.
Chair Hill, Director Sumption, Commissioners, Alice Fields. Right-of-way agent for.
Yep, thank you.
Right-of-way agent for Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. Item 4B on your agenda is informational item regarding a release of a deed restriction on property that is owned by Jackson County. In 1974, the Department of Transportation sold a property along Highway 140 to Jackson County. This 7-acre property located a little west of Brownsboro, about 5 miles east of Eagle Point. The restriction they put on the property was so long as used for public park purposes. In putting that restriction in place, they were able to reduce the sale of the property to the county. They reduced it by 50% for that restriction. The records indicate that although there were several buildings on the property at the time, those were demolished, and this property has never been developed for park purposes or for any other purpose since the county took ownership of it. The adjacent landowner has recently reached out to the county to see if they would be interested in selling them the property. The county has reached out to us to see if we would release that deed restriction. The county is currently in the process of establishing the land value. And once the land value is established and equitable compensation is determined for OPRD, staff will come before you again and ask for approval to accept this, relinquish this deed restriction from their deed.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, comments, thoughts? Go ahead, Commissioner Dewar.
It's our understanding then that because they received title, fee simple title to this property at 50% of appraised value at the time.
Yes.
And it's our understanding that we would receive 50% of the sales price back to OPRD as compensation.
The just compensation would be equitable to a 50%
Right,
value.
right.
Yeah.
So I know in a technical sense, I guess as a release of deed restriction, in some ways it almost feels like an exercise of the deed restriction. And which is an interesting distinction because we are actually seeking compensation because it's moved out of park use.
Yes.
Which is interesting. And it's such an unusual case in some ways that it's not, I sometimes wonder about the precedents established by releasing deed restrictions because we want to honor the expectations and intentions of prior staff and commissions who have made decisions about the use of the property. And we always want to be careful that our deed restrictions are used, judiciously, that they stick around and aren't just used as a temporary device of convenience, basically, to allow a property, for example, to transfer without the expectation that it would be upheld in the future. But in this case, it's a fairly unique situation, and we are in some ways almost exercising our deed restriction by virtue of receiving compensation that comes back to OPRD.
And in this case, the records show that they sold it to them, they sold it to them for 50% less than the appraised value by placing that in place. So that makes it a little more clear that that was the compensation for putting that deed restriction on it.
Right, right. And it's zoned agricultural, is that correct?
My understanding is it's zoned agricultural.
Right. Yeah, very good.
So,
Yeah,
Thank you for those thoughtful comments. Anybody else? Go ahead, Commissioner Grassi.
So thanks for all your work on this. When it comes back for action, will you, if it's possible, bring maps that show contours? It's
I will.
helpful to me.
I will.
All right. Thank you, Alice. Seeing no other comments, we'll move on to our next item, item 4C, Lucky Mute.
And I could get our IT to show me how to get my map up there so they can see this one. This is an action item, so I would like you to see the easements that we're referring to. I apologize. On the desktop, on the desktop. It's 4C. My apologies for the delay. This agenda item 4C is in regards to Lucky Mute State Natural Area and an exchange of easements with Greenbelt Land Trust. In March of 2023, Greenbelt Land Trust acquired lands that are between our north and south Lucky Mute State Natural Area properties. This property has approximately a half a mile of Willamette River frontage. And it is a property that OPRD has had an interest in for many, many years. Our staff and the land trust worked towards development of 2 easements that would better serve both our state natural area and the land trust properties.
Alice, I think we're going to take a pause for a second. I think they need to share your screen to Zoom.
Sorry.
Technology, I don't know what either.
That's why we have each other.
Okay, no, you're good.
There you go.
Thank you.
Is that better? Again, sorry for the interruption here, and technology is not my key, so. The first of the proposed easements is that of a recreational trail. The yellow dotted line here would be a recreational trail to provide our users access to both the north and south. And as you can see, it will go along the river so they can enjoy the views of the Willamette River as they're out hiking in this area. The second proposed easement is a reciprocal easement that will provide beneficial vehicular access for management and maintenance purposes of both properties. This would not be a public road. This would be for the 2 ownerships for managing and maintaining their lands. The roads are basically in place, the location. These were agricultural fields, and these were the roads in and around those fields. Survey work was recently completed, and we are now here to request approval to grant and accept these easements.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from members of the commission?
I'll just say I really appreciate the collaborative efforts to help sort of achieve the greater goals of both OPRD and the Greenbelt Land Trust. And I move approval.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Dewar to approve the acceptance and exchange of easements at Lucky Mute State Natural Area property and authorize the OPRD director to sign all necessary instruments effectuating the transaction. Can I get a second?
Second.
Great. Commissioner Izumi, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your work on that, Alice.
Thank you.
Okay, next up on the agenda, item 4D, Tubbs Springs State Wayside. And I think this is with Tabitha, who's online.
Morning.
Hold on 1 second, Tabitha. Katie's gonna get you up on screen.
Great.
We can hear you though. That's a good step.
We're headed in the right direction. And hopefully you can all see the map as well.
We will momentarily. Katie's working
Okay,
on it.
great. Thank you.
No pressure as everybody stares at her. And she just stays so calm under all this technical pressure. There, we see the map and you.
Excellent. Well, good morning, Chair Hill, Director Sumption, Commissioners. My name is Tabitha Henriksen. I'm one of your staff with your real estate services team for OPRD. Today, we are bringing an informational item only about a potential easement that may be donated to state parks. We were contacted by a party that used to own the property to the north of Tubbs Springs State Wayside, which is a 40-acre piece that State Parks owns but is currently being managed by Jackson County. This is a location that's along the Applegate Trail. It has been a safe haven for travelers for many, many years. The property, one of its main features that folks stop in to visit is these lovely historic tiered stone tubs that waters cascade through. The water feature being a significant portion of why folks stop at this particular park. We, of course, are very interested in making sure we can secure our access to our source of water. So this neighbor to the north sold their property late last year, but when they did so, they reserved an easement. It's only about 2,200 square feet, but that encompasses the existing equipment and water line that is just over our north boundary into that neighboring property. That would get us access to all of the Springbox equipment and line that we may need to ensure that our water right there continues to flow down to the tubs. Are there any questions about this one? No decisions needing to be made today.
Any questions? All right, Tabitha, I don't see any.
Okay, great.
you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 5A. This is an action item, local government grant program for the large grants.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Am I close enough?
Yep,
Okay.
we can hear you. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Hill, Director Sumption, and members of the commission. I'm Michelle Scalise, Manager of the Grants and Community Programs section. I will be presenting the next 4 agenda items to you. So again, we get some quality time together today. I am going to present first the large grant, 2024 large grant awards for the local government grant program, but I wanted to give a little bit of background just on the overall 2024 cycle and budget. So in the 2024 grant cycle for all grant types, large, small, and planning, we had just over $34 million to award, which is unprecedented. While we typically split the available funding, which was $46 million for the biennium between the first and second biennium, first and second year of the biennium, 50-50, we didn't have that trigger in place for the first part of the biennium. So we awarded around $12 million, leaving us $34 million for this one grant round. And so obviously it's been kind of a drastically different grant cycle just because of the trigger from the 12% to 25% coming into effect. So yeah, it just, we got a lot of applications. I did not expect, I really didn't expect to be able to award out as much as we are asking for this time. But yeah, we got a record number of applications. And so in the large grant category, we received 55 qualified applications. So that 55 applications requested a total of nearly $34 million in grant assistance. And the committee met via Zoom on June 22nd through the 25th. So it was a long 4 days of meetings to review and score the large grant requests and establish a ranking list based on the established scoring criteria. 50 projects were recommended for funding by the committee. And the action that I'm requesting today is commission approval of the ranking and distribution of large grant requests as recommended by the advisory committee to award funds as detailed in your attached spreadsheet in your packet.
Madam Chair, I'd make that motion.
We have a motion from Commissioner Grasty. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second from Commissioner Dewar. Any thoughts or comments from the commission before we move to vote?
I always appreciate the maps.
Yeah.
It shows a lot in Marion County,
Yeah.
but anyway, helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Those in favor of approving, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Hearing none, it's approved.
Thank you. So Director Sumption, Chair Hill, commission members, for the record, again, I'm Michelle Scalise and I'm presenting item 5B, Local Government Grant Program 2024 Small Grant Awards.
We'll
And
go
I
ahead
want
and
to
do,
comment.
we do have public comment for this,
Yes.
but we'll go ahead and do the briefing
You wanna
first
do
and
the
then
brief
public
first?
comment.
Okay, great. Okay, so I did want to talk a little bit about the available funding for small grants. So how by rule we split the funding available. So as I mentioned, we had 34 million available. Typically we set aside 20%, which is new. It used to be 15% until we had a recent rule change. So we would set aside 20% because we don't know what applications are coming in, which would have been about $6.7 million. We only initially received, I think, a little bit under $1 million of requests. So we did not need that 20% in the small grant category. So what we did do is once we went through our technical review and there were a couple applications that did not make it through. So we initially set the available amount as I think it was somewhere around $952,000 because that was the amount of requests we received. When those two applications dropped off, we then lowered the available funding to match the requests, meaning that we could potentially fund all of the projects if they scored well enough and met the criteria. So what we did is take that balance from the 6.7 million of the 20% and then just moved it back into the large grant category. we changed that to 884, 226, which was the total requests. So the 4-member OPRD grant staff committee met August 12th, 2024 to review and score the small grant requests. Those are requests up to $100,000. And the scoring committee evaluated and ranked the project applications based on the established scoring criteria and recommended funding all 12 grant applications in this category. So the action I'm requesting today is commission approval of the ranking and distribution of small grant requests as recommended by the scoring committee to award funds as detailed in the spreadsheet in your packet.
Great, thank you, Michelle. I think we'll go ahead and move to public comment on this. I think we had a John Doherty who was online who wanted to speak about the program.
Good morning, everyone. This is John Doherty with the City of Heppner. I really didn't have any public comment. I just wanted to view the Zoom, but I've just been with the City of Heppner for 1 year, and I was excited that we were recommended for the funding on this for our city park remodel. And I appreciate the commission's review on this, and the city is looking forward to moving forward in a construction phase in 2025. And the highlight of our project is to replace all of our park equipment and then add new equipment that will be, excuse me, inclusive. So visitors of all levels of mobility will be able to access park equipment, and then there will be specific park equipment that is inclusive to all visitors outside of a traditional jungle gym structure that you would think of. So I know local residents and our city council and everyone involved in this project is excited for the new vision on the park. And again, I appreciate everyone's help moving forward on this. And thank you.
Wonderful. I'm glad that your project's going to get funded, hopefully, if I can get a motion. Are there any other comments or thoughts before we move forward? Okay.
I'll move approval of the small grant as allocated.
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Dewar with the second. All those in support of approval of the ranking and distribution of small grant requests as recommended by the scoring committee, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, the grants are approved. Thank you, Michelle.
Go Heppner.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty.
Go Heppner.
Thank you.
Next, agenda item 5C, local government grant program, the planning grants.
Chair Hill, commissioners and Director Sumption, it's me again, Michelle Scalise for the record. I wanted to give a little background on this too. So funding for the small community grant planning grants is typically just set at $300,000. We just kind of depend, regardless of the funding, that's the set amount that we have decided to set aside. We do have some, we can move some things around, but that's what we set aside for the small grant for planning category. So the eligible applicants to this program includes cities and districts with a maximum population of 10,000 people, and for counties, a maximum population of 50,000 people. The 4-member OPRD grant staff scoring committee met on August 12th to review and score small community park planning grant requests, again, requests up to $50,000. The scoring committee evaluated and ranked application based on the scoring criteria. We did receive 9 planning grant applications requesting a total of almost $372,000 in funding assistance. The scoring committee has recommended funding 7 projects totaling $301,990, which I think we can do with the available funds we have. So the action requested is that I am seeking approval of the ranking and distribution of small community planning grant requests as recommended by the scoring committee.
Thank you, Michelle.
So I'll move for approval as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Grasty.
I'll second that.
Awesome, thank you. So we're voting on approval of the 2024 planning grant awards. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, so approved. Last up, agenda item 5D, the all-terrain vehicle ATV grants.
Thank you, Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission, still Michelle here for the record. I'm presenting item 5D for your consideration, the all-terrain vehicle grant recommendations. The ATV committee met in a hybrid meeting August 15th. 2024 to review grant applications requesting $441,000, almost $442,000 in grants. The committee scored each grant application based on the established scoring criteria and recommended funding all 8 grant applications. So the action that I'm requesting today is commission approval for the ranking and distribution of ATV grants as recommended by the committee.
Do you have any emotion? Move forward.
I move approval of the ATV grant recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner Dewar. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Cribbins. Okay, all those in favor of approval of the ATV grants as recommended by the ATV grant subcommittee, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing none, the motion passes. You.
Thank
Just a
you.
Huge shout out to Michelle and team because going from 12 to 25%, we were like, one, we won't even get that many. And then when they came in, the team handled it as if it was how we've always done things. So kudos to the team for his.
I'd like to say that I like Michelle's job handing out money to people.
Yeah.
That sounds like a bad
They
gig.
have to say no.
I know, the no is hard, but you know, she walks in the room like a rock star, I'm sure, and when she gets to, you know,
I go to events with her for fun.
I do love that part of the job and just seeing what we can do in all sizes of communities across the entire state of Oregon. It's really amazing and makes a huge, just kind of life-changing difference in a lot of these communities. So yes, I do love my job and thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item 6A, Heritage Division update.
Good morning. Chair Hill, Director Sumption, is that close enough? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Members of the commission, good morning. For the record, Matt Rippey with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. I'm here today with agenda item 6A, which is an informational item and a Heritage Division update. And before I jump in, I'm just going to highlight a couple of things in the brief there. But I just wanted to mention that in talking with the program managers in the Heritage Division, we thought that an expanded version, they do so much work, and a lot of times we just limit the brief to a couple pages. So you'll see, or you may notice that this one's a little bit longer, just because they do have so much going on in that division. We thought it might be helpful. I'm not going to read or highlight every single one, but I would encourage you to look through those as you have time. The first one that I did want to highlight is that Coos Bay was recognized as an Oregon Heritage All-Star Community. There's a set of criteria that's required for a community to kind of be able to be listed as an all-star community, and not only just to be listed, but there's ongoing requirements that that they need to fulfill to maintain that listing. So I wanted to highlight that one. The next is on the second page, and the Heritage Division recently awarded 18 grants totaling just $1 under $300,000 for historic property and archaeological projects. 6 of those were for the Diamonds in the Rough grant program, which kind of dresses up historic buildings and communities kind of across the state. The second were awarded for Preserving Oregon, the Preserving Oregon grant that serves to restore and protect buildings or properties that are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The third one that I want to highlight, because it's a big deal for the Heritage Division, is they are fully staffed for the first time in about a year. And so it's been a long year for that program. I think that they have done very well considering the circumstances, but I just wanted to highlight Katie Abrams came on recently, and then we actually had another individual fill the final spot. I hope I'm not jinxing ourselves, but fill the final spot earlier this week. So congratulations to that group for being fully staffed now. The last one that I wanted to highlight are just some of the different commissions and committees that are part of the Heritage Division. They have 4 in total. There is the Oregon Heritage Commission, the Oregon Commission on Historic Cemeteries, the State Advisory Committee on Historic Preservation, and the Historic Assessment Review Committee. There are some highlights just from a couple of months, so you can see how active those commissions and committees are. I would encourage you to, again, read through those. I won't read through them in detail, but I think it just kind of shines a spotlight on the amount of work that's being done in that Heritage Division through the commissions and committees. Are there any questions?
Go ahead, Commissioner Graff.
So more of a comment. I'm aware in Harney County too, and I know there's many other historic log cabins around the state that are falling down. And I think the division had a couple of pretty good guys to help identify where we might get some resources to work on those. And I think they may have retired. So there's a real struggle trying to find people who are qualified to go in and do the work. And in fact, in Harney County, at least one outfit was hired, came and looked at the building, went, we have no idea what we're doing to that one. And we're going to lose those buildings. So anyway, the reason I'm throwing this out there is if you know of resources, or give me a hand, I'll get it to the right people and they can pursue it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Commissioner Grassley, it's a great question. And I know enough maybe to be dangerous, but I know people that know the answers to those questions through our Heritage Grants and Outreach programs. I know that they have a list of qualified, construction firms that work on that, whether that be for the, kind of preservation or restoration. So I will send you that information, and I'll include in there some of the grant information for some of that preservation work as well.
So it also is perhaps not entirely germane here, but the Peter French, the cattle burner, had much history in Southeast Oregon and was shot in some kind of gunfight. We recently found his desk, his bookkeeper's desk in Washington, D.C. And the fellow has it is moving to Seattle. So a couple of us are going to make a trip to Seattle shortly and pick it up, but kind of fun to find something that how in the world it got to DC is beyond me, but anyway, we're going to get it back. So
Thank you for those comments. Any other? Go ahead, Commissioner Dewar.
I'll just embarrass you, Matt, by thanking you very much for being such a cheerful and professional presence as the reorganization has been happening within the Heritage Division, and reaching out to people internally and outside of the department to seek their earnest assessment of how things could go forward. And it's been it has felt like an interestingly inclusive process where you've been reaching out and earnestly taking people's input. So I appreciate that during this time of transition. It's really been, I think, a helpful thing, a helpful approach to the entire effort. So thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for doing that, because I wasn't going to do that to him, but I do want to thank Matt. He's stepped up in just about every role. I think he served as an HR director for about an 8-month period, and then it was like, will you also be the SHPO? And he's like, what? But it has been really good for the team and the community, and having a different lens to look at it and bring forward some different perspectives and approaches, because as you mentioned, that team has not been at full capacity, and I think it gets lost in translation how much this team actually does. And in many states, it's its own agency. Like it is that critical to communities. And every time that there is a big priority around housing, for example, or ARPA funding, or pick the thing, SHPO has to be there. SHPO has to do all the Section 106 reviews. They have to do all the cultural clearances, and we never ramp up to meet all those other big priorities. And so we become the 4-letter word, SHPO, and it's not in a positive way. And so Matt is doing everything he can with the team to help them feel more valued, because they do incredible work.
They
and
truly do.
It
They
feels
truly
more like we get the frustration rather than the appreciation. So we're heading towards appreciation.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I would just say on their behalf, I'm amazed at how kind of positive they can keep in the work environment that they sometimes have, working with other agencies, and they're an incredibly committed group of folks. And not just committed in the way that you might think, but they just want to work with folks to get the right things done. They're an amazing group of people. I feel pretty lucky to be able to be working with them. So it's definitely been kind of good in that way as well. So thank you.
Wonderful.
I have to laugh because in a former life, once upon a time, I said that SHPO was the most hated agency in the state of
Hey.
Oregon. I now believe it's LCDC, but anyway, well done.
I think the legislature's got them all beat.
We're gonna fix that.
Okay. Well, thank you. And it's nice to see Coos Bay recognized as an all-star community. I think Melissa and I already knew it, but
You're from Glide.
I know, now I'm glad.
Out North Bend did not.
Yes. North End. Marshfield graduates, we have to. All right, moving on to approval. Oh, no, I'm sorry, to the Go Bond project update with our Deputy Director of Field Heritage and Community Services.
Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission, for the record, Matt Rippey with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. And I'm sorry, give me just one moment here to get back to the top. I'm hoping that is sharing online.
It looks like it. Well, the little thing in the middle didn't come up. Daniel's on the way.
How's that?
There it is.
Okay.
Perfect.
Excellent, thank you. Again, I'll start over. Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission. For the record, Matt Rippey with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. I'm here today with informational item 7A, which is an update on the general obligation bond projects that we have across the state. The last time we came with an informational was in June of 23. Prior to that was in, I think, November of 21 to gain approval of the project list. I know that we, over the course of the last year plus, have come to you with seeking approval for procurements around design and construction of these projects. But I thought it might be helpful to kind of give you the big picture of where we're at, what things have changed over the last couple of years as we've navigated some climate change decisions, some cost and permitting changes. So as we go through, please at any time, let me know what kind of questions you have.
I have one. Can we print them in a bigger font next time, the printed copies?
Yeah, I mean.
Are you referring to the original project list? Yes, if that's, yes, I'm sorry about that. I can send you.
Or provide magnifying glasses.
I can definitely send a better copy. That was from, maybe too much, but that was from the original slide presentation. And I didn't intend for it to print off that small, so I'm sorry. This hopefully will help with that. It'll be in a little bit bigger fonts. I was hoping, I guess I'm not quite sure how to get this into a slide format, but I think this should work. If I need to zoom in, let me know. So here's a quick overview of the presentation. I was just going to go through some background information on general obligation bonds, how we came to receive that funding. Again, it's been a little while, so I thought that would be good. And then I was going to go through kind of a broad overview summary of where we're at, some of the challenges that we faced, and then go through individual project updates. So as you may recall, in what I'll always consider an incredibly generous act, the 2021 legislature approved Senate Bill 5506. Part of that Senate bill dedicated $50 million in general obligations to state parks. This has been in my career anyways, an unbelievable and unprecedented opportunity for the agency. The amount that we've been able to invest into the state park system, while we're not done, we still have a couple more years. It's just an unbelievable opportunity. As you can see from the language in that Senate bill, that second sentence, the project includes improvements or replacements to facilities and related infrastructure, such as buildings, water systems, septic and sewer systems, electrical systems, restroom and shower facilities, as well as modernizing and expanding campgrounds. Again, I'm sorry, again, you can't read the project list, but if you remember when we first brought this list of projects to you, it was to make sure that we hit the spirit of that language in the bill. And before I move on, I do want to acknowledge here that this never would have happened without the late Senator Peter Courtney. He was an incredible proponent for state parks, and I didn't recognize him when we first did this list because it was my understanding that he didn't want us to recognize him. But I want to recognize him now.
Well, we might have a weird storm after this.
Yeah. Again, I think about his passion for what this agency does. And this is probably the best example that I could think of how he could impact the agency. So I just want to recognize him. Okay, so moving on, not only did the legislature in that Senate bill approve the $50 million in general obligation bonds, they also approved the debt service through general funds to pay for the bonds. So really this funding kind of came to us without any financial impact to pay these back. Again, just an incredible opportunity for us. As you may recall, there's ways that we can spend this funding and there's ways that we can't. The intention is for capital improvements, so big, very large scale projects, which again, I think as we get through there, you'll see some of the impacts of that. The things that we cannot spend it on are fees related to agency costs. So any of our fees for DOJ costs or to DAS on consulting with contract and procurement, those kinds of things we can't. And then it's not intended to re-roof a small building. These are kind of massive projects. And so again, as we kind of go through these, I hope you'll see that we really tried to, that was our target, was just to hit kind of some more very large scale projects. As we learned of this funding in 2021, we didn't have a lot of time to kind of pull this together. I know in some cases, an agency will do planning, they'll do permitting, they'll kind of get everything in place and then go to the legislature to request funding. This came to us not as a surprise. I think we had a couple of months. And so we started pulling folks together from across the agency to figure out if indeed this funding did come to us, how would we target it kind of across the state? And so we came up with 3 categories. These are based on similar categories that we use for our kind of standard facility investment program that we do every biennium. So the 3 categories were park-wide and efficiency projects, enhancement and expansion projects, and then historic restoration. The idea specifically with the park-wide and efficiency projects is our normal kind of way of doing business during a biennium is we may go in and replace a restroom. This was to take a step back and look at, do we need to replace a restroom and the utilities around it? Do we need to expand campsites? And really kind of take in that capital improvement idea. One thing I do want to mention, and again, I know that some of this is probably repeat and you may remember it, but because of the visitation and the environmental conditions over on the coast, a lot of the park-wide and efficiency funding went to help kind of with restoration across some of those parks with the utilities. We have a lot of direct burial of electrical lines in our coastal parks. So bringing those up to standard, the buildings, because they see that higher visitation, because of the coastal climate, a lot of that funding went there. The Valley region received a lot of the expansion funding. We wanted to give folks in our more populous area of the state opportunity to kind of try out Oregon State Parks and be able to do that at less risk so that they don't have to drive a couple of hours, so that if something goes south, a baby starts crying in the middle of the night, they don't have a 3 to 5 hour drive home. They can, a half an hour, get in the car and head back home. So you'll see that. And then the historic restoration project, we chose, it was kind of combined with the project that we have at Fort Stevens. And again, I'll get into that in a little bit more detail shortly. Okay, some kind of a broad summary and some of the challenges. Again, looking at the scale of these improvements, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of times with our facility investment program, we might go in and upgrade a utility system in a campground or replace a bathroom. And this really was meant to kind of take a step back and look at the bigger picture and fund a park at a level when we walked away at the end of these projects. We don't have to go back there and do much for quite a while. We can move on to some of the other parks. The other thing, the next bullet point, I could probably spend the rest of the presentation on, which is recognizing staff. I remember when I gave the original presentation to the commission and asking for approval on the project list, I mentioned that it's amazing to me how this agency comes together. Almost 3 years later, I could go on and on about that. Every single section of this agency has been involved in helping to get these projects going, including our SHPO office, including the Land and Water Conservation staff, and then of course our communications, contracting, procurement, everybody. It's incredible to me how this agency has pulled together to help these projects be successful, even as we've seen some changes. So I just want to make sure and recognize folks. In terms of some of the challenges that we've seen, I kind of listed some of the obvious ones around permitting, whether that be for natural resource permitting, cultural resource permitting. Climate change has had a bigger impact on some of these projects than I originally anticipated, for sure. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. Some of the processes are just, they can be a little bit slow. And when you have a 3-year timeline to spend that kind of funding, it can be a little stressful at times. And then of course the costs. I know we've talked about that as well, as we've seen an increase in costs. I know that I brought briefs to you for approval on increase for planning and construction. And I think we're going to kind of continue to see some of those things. I wanted to mention in the future impacts, probably the two things related to these projects, but I think also related to the agency as a whole, that we're going to continue to need to get to navigate is the climate change and the financial outlook. We're currently working on developing a climate adaptation plan for the agency. I'm hoping to have a scope of work and be out to bid by the end of this year so that we can start getting, I think one of the gentlemen that gave public testimony earlier mentioned the work that Washington State Parks and California State Parks have done, and we'll probably mirror what they've done. They've got some incredible resources that I think will be really helpful for us. And I think it would be pretty cool to have kind of a consistent review along the West Coast. The other's the financial outlook. Commissioner Condor and I were talking yesterday, and I mentioned how even as we see some of the costs stabilize and quote unquote normalize, they're still at such a higher level than where we're funded that how do we figure out how to fill that gap? That's going to be an ongoing conversation, I think, for quite a while. So again, those two things have definitely caused some challenges within these projects, but I think for the agency as a whole, over time, we're going to have to continue to navigate those. Ongoing needs, I just would mention that, this has been an incredible injection into the state park system. We've been able to combine the $50 million in general obligation bond funding with a little over $16 million of a policy option package for restrooms and paving with that 50, as well as our normal kind of biennial facility investment program of about $14 million to create about an $80 million set of improvements for the state system. Again, I have not seen anything like this in my career, and I'm guessing I probably won't before my time is up. I think all of these projects are very thoughtful and very well done. Having said that, of course, it does you know, we still have a pretty sizable backlog of maintenance, from things like upgrading utility systems to things like the Vista House, that are still out there. You know, things like the Vista House, I think I've heard rough numbers of, you know, $20 to $30 million price tag on restoring that building, depending on how we want to kind of move forward with that. So I don't mean to be kind of the rain cloud, but I think we need to talk about those things. I think we need to be aware about them. With that, I'll move on to the progress that we have made on these projects. That's a little bit larger font.
Not much.
But not much. I will be sure to email out that project list. So again, there were 2 bond sales that resulted in 2 disbursements. The first was $25 million that we received in May of 22. The second was $25 million in March of 23. And like I mentioned, we've been able to supplement with our policy option package funding that we got this biennium, as well as our facility investment program. I'll go through these individually as well. So the way that this presentation will work, I'll go through the initial scope, and then the second slide for each of the projects will be kind of where we landed based on any permitting that we ran into, or, you know, if there were costs that we needed to reduce. So the first project was a park-wide rehabilitation at Beverly Beach. As you can see, and I mentioned the direct burial of a lot of the electrical lines on the coast. There's an example of that. So we're going to upgrade that system, replace the water distribution system, upgrade the sewer system, and repave the campground. And that originally had an estimate of $3 to $5 million. So as you saw yesterday, this project is almost done. We've got some paving and some water line work to do, but we're very close. The sewer work was reduced or pulled from the project due to the high cost and being a lower priority. We were able to supplement this project with policy option package funding to do the paving, some of the ADA site upgrades. You can see the current cost estimate is right around $7 million. This was an interesting project too, in that there were 2 inadvertent discoveries. You can see, it's a little bit hard to tell from that picture, but there were 2 old kind of roadways, timber roadways that were used to move logs and logging equipment, is my understanding, that were discovered as the new utilities were going in. So very cool discoveries, and I think helps with maybe some of the interpretive work at the park, but it also obviously delayed progress in the project. We, as you heard, the park manager, Burke Martin, mentioned yesterday, we ended up having to keep the park closed for an additional month in the beginning of summer, which was not easy for our visitors or for our staff. But that project should be pretty well wrapped up by the spring. Once we're able to pave in the spring, we should be back on track with that one. The next project is Cape Lookout State Park. You may remember that this project was going to relocate the camping loops that were closest to the foredune and closest to the ocean up onto the hillside behind the existing campground, to get them out of the way of sea level rise, of kind of the increase in severity and frequency we're seeing in winter storms. As our design firm started looking at the feasibility of that, we had that done in the park master plan in 2014. As they began looking at that and doing some geological work, they recommended to us that we don't move the campground up there because the soils weren't stable. I think I was in a little bit of a denial at the time, and I asked them to please look at that again. They did, and came back with the same answer. And so again, this to me was going to kind of be our showcase for climate adaptation retreat strategy. The landscape had some different ideas for us, and so it was some, maybe not for everybody. It was a difficult conversation for me, because again, I just wanted this so bad to be a cool showcase for how we were adapting to climate change. We're still able to do some work there, but it's, normally when we do this kind of work, it's to look 50 to 100 years out. We're doing work that's probably looking out about 20 years, because the reality is there are parts of Cape Lookout that that are not going to be usable into the future, I think. And so we're still going to do some electrical upgrades within the campground. Because again, there's a lot of direct burial there. There's utility departments that refuse to come do work there because some of the electrical is unsafe. And so we're going to get that upgraded. That park has a dynamic revetment berm that was put in a little over 20 years ago, and it's at the end of its lifespan. And so we're going to do some work to reinforce that again, just to protect the infrastructure that we do have, knowing again, over time, we're probably not going to have as big of a footprint there. We're still going to do paving in the day use and some of the campground in areas that we know based on inundation levels will still be usable in the future. And then rather than replace the D-loop restroom and shower facility, we're going to do a remodel. So again, the funding that we're putting in there, some of it is knowing that, you know, those things are going to last 20 years. The other is knowing that it is going to be 50 plus years that we're investing in. Are there any questions on this one? Again, I know this one was out of all of our projects, this was the biggest change for obvious reasons.
I'd just like to say I'm really glad that we have come to this analysis and recognition and are moving forward with a climate adaptation plan and thinking through that a little bit more, because it's not just going to be Cape Lookout. There's going to be a lot of stuff along the coast. And we're supposed to be good stewards of public dollars and making sure that we're thinking about those investments in the long run and where funding should be going in the future to actually, think through where these parks might be with climate change is really important. So I know it was hard to get here, but I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Cape Lookout's a really good reminder. It will still be a great park in the future. It's just going to be a slightly different park in the future. There's a lot of places that are still high elevation in Cape Lookout to choose from, and places where the visitors will be years from now. But yeah, we have to adjust some of our expectations, and this long range planning we're talking about, or even not so long range planning, is just so important in many sites along the coast and beyond. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. I also, this is a little bit off to the side, but Dogami, the agency Dogami has been doing some work for us up at Ecola over the last couple of years, doing some modeling on slides, updating the LiDAR information. I met with them last week with a couple of other folks. The outlook is not great for the areas that we do have developed at Ecola. As we get the final report from them, they do a great job of explaining in very basic terms so that I can understand what the future of Ecola is. I am hoping and planning on having them come in and once we have that final report, doing the same presentation for you all, because I think it's very informative. And again, it creates some tough decisions, but to your point, Commissioner Hill, I think some of the while they may be challenging decisions, they're obvious decisions, I think. And so I look forward to doing that. Probably, I'm guessing it'll be February that we have them come and present, I think probably in a workshop session. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. The next project is camping expansion at Champoeg. This is adding an entire new loop into Champoeg. I'm happy to say that this project is moving along just great. In fact, the next couple are. This, I think, will be a very cool opportunity for folks. Again, like I mentioned earlier, we wanted to be able to provide state park camping opportunities close to our more metropolitan centers so that folks could kind of experience what we have to offer without having to go to Wallowa Lake or across the state. And so it's maybe not easy to see, but there is the new design for the campground. These sites are a little bit shorter. They offer a little bit different amenities. I don't know if you remember when we first came out with the original list, the idea behind some of these sites are to provide maybe not the large RV sites that we've always traditionally had in some of our larger parks, but but, you know, as use changes and folks are coming more in smaller, like the R-Pod or teardrop type trailers or the van life type vans, and tent camping, it's more to provide some of those kinds of opportunities, as well as some additional cabins, because we know how popular those are.
Matt, what are the average length of those hard stands that we're putting in there?
I'm grateful that I have Jenna Marmon here, our parent, who could answer that question. 35 to 40. Yeah.
Okay.
So again, if you're familiar with Shampooey, we do have some of those larger sites in the other loops that we have there. So these are a little bit shorter to, again, kind of a car and a small trailer, or just a car or two cars. And so it's just a little bit different. Moving on to Fort Stevens, again, this was a good example in my mind of that park-wide rehabilitation. We had proposed a lot of work at Fort Stevens, including upgrading some of the utility systems, connecting sewer, a replacement of one of the restrooms in the campground, replacement of the day use restroom that you see there at the Peter Iredale, and then paving. We had also proposed adding a manager's residence, but that was one of the projects that was pulled because of funding. The bid for that came back at over $1 million, and so we pulled that project. Here is a quick update on where we're at. There's the new restroom there at the Peter Iredale. There's conversion of 41 standard sites to ADA. The utility work is moving along. In fact, we'll be, I believe, next June, we're going to have a commission meeting up in Astoria to be able to go look most of this project. A lot of this project, I won't say all of it, will be pretty well wrapped up by then. And so it'll be a good chance to go tour this one, I think, and then a Nehalem one as well. So things are moving along really well at Fort Stevens. Also at Fort Stevens is the restoration of the guardhouse. We had originally proposed this to be stabilizing the exterior of the building. As we dug into it a little bit more, the scope grew, as did the price tag, and we had to bring it back down to truly just stabilizing the exterior of the building. I'm going to be over there in a couple of weeks, and I'm really excited to see. It sounds like this project is moving along well. Repointing of the bricks, new gutters, the couple of those that are on the roof structure are restored and repaired. The roof itself. And so this project is moving along pretty well. In fact, you see that by the end of the year, this one should be wrapped up. Moving on to Kam Wah Chung. This was one of our enhancement projects. This had been proposed in the master plan several years ago, was to purchase some property from the city of John Day and to build a collections and interpretive center. You may remember that we have leased an interpretive center and collections building from the Grant County Library Foundation, and now I believe the city of John Day, for quite a while. And with the uncertainty that comes with the lease, especially around, in my mind, the collections, it's really important to get those kind of in one of our own facilities on our own property so that we can make sure that we care for that, those items over the long run. And so this project is going to go past the general bond time frames, which is okay. Again, I think I've mentioned before, we're going to be able to supplement it with our internal facility investment program funding, and the project will be done. It's going to last a little bit longer than the general obligation fund timeline that we have. We'll have the funding spent on other properties, but that's not a great rendering of the initial design, but it gives you a sense of what we're looking at. The idea is to keep it, in line with kind of the feel of the property. Again, one of the things I'm most excited about is making sure that we're providing a facility that's taking care of the collections from the Kam Wah Chung Museum. Okay, moving on to Nehalem. if you recall, this was an upgrade to the electrical in D, E, and F loops, upgrade to the water system, new restroom in that would serve C and D loops, walk-in tent loop, and a new cabin loop. This scope has changed a little bit, again, primarily due to funding. I think we pulled the tent loop and the cabin loop. But we are moving forward with upgrading D, E, and F loops, upgrading the water system, the restroom facility. We'll be improving accessibility in 9 campsites throughout the campground, and then repaving the entrance road, which if you've been on that entrance road recently, it desperately needs it. And there's current cost estimate. This is actually in progress as we speak. This is another one that as we tour the North Coast, I think in June, we'll be able to go take a look at this project. They've got a lot of work going on right now. One thing I would add, just because it's part of the Nehalem Bay Management Unit, part of that policy option funding that I was mentioning earlier is in play and actually repaving the Saddle Mountain Road that we toured earlier this year. And I just throw that in as information. Moving on to Silver Falls State Park. Again, this was a project designed to provide additional opportunity within the Willamette Valley, but also to reduce congestion in the South Falls area. So the project would design and construct a new campground with 40 to 50 sites, create a visitor center, improve the North Falls trailhead and parking lot, and then renovate the group camp restroom there at Silver Falls. I'm happy to report that this project is moving along very well. The North Falls Trailhead and day use parking area has been complete. The camping expansion, there's the design that you can see there. The visitor center is in progress. The price tag is a little bit higher than we initially anticipated. But again, we've been able to supplement with our own internal funding through the policy option package and FIP funding. Just one more update. The Smith Rock State Park project, where we were going to be working on congestion, access, and the new visitor center. For those of you that have been there before, I think we toured the yurt that's there as a visitor center. The idea is to create a new design, work on the day use parking lot, create some additional trails. A lot of folks that go to to Smith Rock, they want to get out, take a quick walk, take some pictures, get back in the car and go. The only major trail that we had now is up Misery Ridge and up around the park, and not everybody wants or probably should do that trail. And so the scope that we have right now that was adopted through the master plan as well is the new visitor center. You can see there the illustration of that new visitor center. I may send out some other drawings. It's an incredible facility that they've designed. I know one of the things that we've talked about with this is to ensure that it doesn't block the view of Smith Rock in any way. And the way that they've designed it and the way it sits in the landscape, it does not do that. It fits incredibly well within the park and within the landscape. So I'm going to make a quick note of myself to send out some other drawings, because I think you'll be very pleased. There's also some improvements to some trails, a new trail that creates better accessibility. We were able to, we were approved for a Land and Water Conservation Fund grant that helped with replacement of the bridge down below. And this is another one that is going to fall beyond the Go Bond timeline. Part of that was because, if you remember, we had to finalize and adopt the Smith Rock master plan. That put us a little bit behind schedule, but things are looking good. And again, we're very fortunate to have kind of that internal funding to be able to make sure that we still finish this project.
Is the bridge done now?
It is. Yes. Yes. The last two projects, because of funding and because of, with Milo McIver in particular, because of some of the permitting requirements that looked like they were going to push the project beyond the Go Bond timeline, we ended up pulling this project. And if you remember, this was going to be a campground expansion. We were going to replace the restroom. We're still going to do some work there. I think we're going to do remodel on that restroom, maybe some paving. I can't quite remember, but it was pulled as a general obligation bond project. The other one that we ended up having to pull just because of prioritization and because of funding was the expansion of the Portland Women's Forum parking area. If you remember, it's got limited parking. We were going to move that parking area kind of to the south, or I guess west of where it is now at a restroom. It's an important project, but it wasn't as competitive as some of the other projects we're working on with the funding and those sorts of things. So with that, I'm sorry that took so long. Are there any questions?
I have a question. You earlier up at Nehalem, you said you were going to do an upgrade to the 3 of the loops with a 50 amp upgrade.
Yes.
Does that mean they're currently 50 amp or you're taking it up to 50 amp?
Up to 50 amp.
Oh,
Yes, thank
yeah.
you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're currently 20 or 30. I think they're 30 probably.
Right.
And again, I was a ranger at that park years ago and was the manager as well. And while I'm excited about our visitors having access to 50 amp, I'm really excited for our rangers not to have to go into the scary panels
Right.
and replace breakers.
Right.
Well, so having that whole thing created is going to be great.
Well, I'm as a user, I really appreciate those 50 amp, and there's so many parks that don't have the
Yeah,
50 amp.
yeah.
And so
It kind of is the standard as we do most of these upgrades, depending on the park, but most of them, especially in larger parks like Fort Stevens or Nehalem or Beverly, we're going to the 50 amp. Yeah.
thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Grassi.
So since we started by talking about Senator Courtney, and I recognize this isn't a Go bond project, but SHPO certainly has some interest. Can we someday get an update on where the capital is on that renovation project? It's
Sure.
I think it'd be interesting. I can tell you, people on the other side of the state don't even know it's being done.
We
You
know
bet.
about it in Salem.
I was gonna say.
Well, I have no doubt at all, I'm sure.
Kind of tired of it.
All right, any other questions?
Just to thank you, Matt, to you and the people that have been working on these. It's fun, but it's a lot of work. It's like
It truly
anything.
is.
It's
Thank you. And I will definitely pass that on. I really can't take much credit. Again, the folks that we have across the agency have done incredible work. And it's one of those things, I was going to mention this during the presentation. I was reminded recently, we're doing some leadership work at exec team. And I was reminded recently that as human beings, if 9 things are going great and one thing's not going well, we have a tendency to focus on that one thing that's not going well. I've really had to take a step back because the impact that this is having on the entire agency and our visitors is amazing. And I shouldn't just pay attention to the things that maybe don't go as well. So it's been a good lesson for me.
And Matt and team will be very humble here, but when this happened to us, this was literally coming out of the pandemic. We had lost over $20 million. We had laid off 47 full-time employees that we rotated to other agencies, 374 seasonals. And in that, we let every project manager, every construction project manager, every planner, we had no one. And all of a sudden, it was the thing that rallied the agency back together. And it has kept us like glue all the way through. So it's been challenging, but, and the other thing that Matt isn't saying here, and to your point, is if the Cape Lookout conversation and the ECOLA conversations weren't happening, we would not be advancing to the level we are in climate adaptation. We know our funding is very limited and we've got to make really good decisions for the future. So it was nice to hear the public saying the same thing. It's like, yay, because we like Washington's too. And there's no need to start from scratch.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Yes,
Really
thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item 7B, Silver Falls South Loop Campground paving restoration. This is an action item.
Thank you. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Good morning, Chair Hill, Director Sumption, and the members of the commission. For the record, my name is Rob Morris, and I'm the engineering lead for Park Improvement Central Services with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. Matt did a great job sort of introducing the types of projects we work on, but I'm here today to present various items for your consideration that relate to park improvement projects being managed by my fellow statewide project managers. So the first item on the agenda under that would be agenda item 7B, Silver Falls South Loop Campground paving restoration. So this is a request from staff for approval to award a construction contract for the Silver Falls South Loop Campground paving restoration project. The scope will generally include restoring the roadways, campsites, pathways, and improving accessibility within the A loop and portions of the B loop, as well as intersections. The expected project budget is between $800,000 and $1 million. And so the action being requested is approval to execute a construction contract with the value not to exceed $1 million.
Thank you. Looking for questions from anybody on this one? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion?
So I'll move for approval to execute a construction contract with a value not to exceed $1 million.
Thank you, Commissioner Grasty.
Second.
All right, Commissioner Berger with the
Yeah, you
second.
did.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, the motion passes. Moving on, thank you. Moving on to 7C, Nehalem Bay.
Thank you. So again, Chair Hill, Director Assumption, for the record, this is Robert Morris. So this is agenda item 7C, Nehalem Bay Construction Contract Amendment. So Matt did a good job describing what's going on at Nehalem Bay right now. And as we start moving into construction, staff is requesting approval to increase the architecture and engineering design contract to a total of $1,525,000. So just a little bit of background, the GO bond budget is between $9 and $10 million for projects including seasonal staff housing, new cabin loop, utility upgrades, several new restrooms, and of course, road paving. The work completed to date is a lot of planning and design preparation for the project to go to construction, including wetland delineation, land use application, and architecture and engineering design. Work remaining, we are working our way through a land use appeal, which should not hold up the construction of the project, but is still an important aspect of local permitting. We also are working through bidding assistance, and then as we move into construction, we'll be needing construction administration from our A&E consultant. So the purpose of the amendment being requested is to add budget to bolster construction administration. Also add budget to complete design services for the boat ramp parking lots, which were an aspect that came in a little later in the design process. And also to reallocate budget related to scope changes during the final design. And that also has to do with the boat ramp and other design changes that have come to light as we work through the design and permitting process. So the proposed project timeline it's actually out to bid right now. Bids should be opening any day now. And construction is scheduled for November 2024 to June 2025. Prior action by the commission was approval for a budget up to $1.4 million for this contract. And so again, the action that's being requested is approval of consultant design and construction administration budget up to $1.525 million.
Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Grassi.
So the only action we're really doing is increasing the budget from 1.4 to 1.525.
That is correct.
I'll make that motion.
Second that.
Great. I have a second from Commissioner Condor. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, the motion passes.
One quick technical
Yes,
question.
please,
Has archaeological survey been completed now for that project?
I believe so, yes. There will be an inadvertent discovery plan utilized on the project in case they run into stuff, you know, kind of as Matt described at Beverly Beach. You know, there's always a contingency plan for doing that kind of stuff, but the preliminary study has been completed.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item 7D, Cape Lookout Go Bond Amendment, also with Rob.
Thank you. Again, for the record, my name is Rob Morris. A little bit of background on this project, as Matt had already kind of set it up for me. This project sort of moved from being a retreat strategy to more being able to use the funds in the best way to, you know, keep the park functioning and operating, you know, within more likely a 20-year timeline, and just addressing some of the more immediate concerns. So with this agenda item, staff is requesting approval for awarding a phase 2 design amendment to the existing consulting contract with KPFF Consulting Engineers. Phase 1 of the project included pre-design analysis of the existing infrastructure and proposed improvements. And that's sort of what Matt talked about, doing the geological studies, realizing that, you know, a retreat strategy wasn't exactly putting campers in the safest place. So that's why we pivoted the design to something different. And so the phase 2 amendment, which we're asking for, would be to develop complete construction documents, plans and specifications, develop cost estimates for all proposed improvements, develop and submit all required permits, and provide support through the permitting process, providing support through the contract bidding process, and basically getting up to the point where we would award this to a construction contractor. This amendment does not include construction administration, which will be covered in a future amendment. But this is basically just getting, getting funding up to the bid and award. So, as a note, funding for phase 2 design is supported through the general obligation bond, as Matt had talked about in his presentation. So the action being requested, now that we have sort of a better scope of exactly what we want to do with the design consultant, would be action requested to approve to amend the existing contract to include design services to a value not to exceed $1.2 million.
I'll move approval.
Right, Commissioner Dewar, do I have a second?
I'll second it, but I have a question.
All right, go ahead, Commissioner Grassi.
I assume that somewhere we've identified where we might come up with the money for the construction administration. As looks like a cost coming at us. So, okay.
Yeah, that would be included in the overall project cost estimate. But until we sort of, develop the plans fully and get it out to bid, at that point, we'll have a better idea of what level of construction administration is required. And that's why, there will be an additional ask for that funding in the future once we have a better idea of exactly what that entails.
Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. All right, we have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion passes. Okay, moving on to agenda item 7E. This is master plan for state parks in Curry County. This is an informational item. I think we have Jenna. Yay. I can probably find it.
Chris is somewhere in Europe just smiling right
still-
now.
Is that what he-
So
I was
proud.
gonna ask.
So proud of Katie and everyone. But I'm wondering if we failed, if we would not get hired.
Yeah.
We'll take a break after we're done with the 7 agenda items and before we go into rulemaking, just to flag.
So
Hang
no
on.
pressure. I'm just between you and lunch.
You're between me and that food.
We have 1 more.
I know.
2 more. Then we're-
Yes, we're just. Oh, no, it's right. But we have to share the screen. Oh. Yeah.
Wanting to get through these things too.
Okay. You're good.
Same authors.
All right.
Go ahead. Good morning. It's still morning, barely. Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Jenna Marmon. I'm the planning and design lead here at OPRD. I'd like to recognize Ellen Freudenthal, who's sitting in the back, who's our team manager. And then also I wanted to make sure to give a shout out to Haley Cox, who's the project manager on this project, and Nicole Sprecher, our small but mighty planning team. I'm here to share an update on one of our major projects, which is a master plan for the state parks in Curry County. Rolls right off the tongue, I know. So today I'm going to give a brief overview of OPRD master planning and then talk about how we selected Curry County as our next project, and then talk about the aforementioned MPS PCC, or Master Plan for State Parks in Curry County. So why master planning? Well, first of all, because it's the law. We do have 2 OARs and ORSs regarding master planning, and there are some critical elements of the law that include providing a forum for public and agency participation, and including consideration of acquisition and disposition or endowment properties. And really, the laws were set up to help emphasize the resource protection as well as public enjoyment of our state parks. So it's really an opportunity to consider our parks as a whole. And why else? Well, because planning is good practice. It's good time. It's good practice to take the time and space to consider long-range futures. It's a smart and strategic thing to do. And the project or the product is a plan, but there are many auxiliary benefits to the process, including building relationships and connections and increasing awareness. So the master planning process is approximately a 2-year endeavor. And the OARs specifically call out the public components as well as many of the other detailed components, including the assessments and how we develop the plan. It's basically a play-by-play description of how we can develop the plan. So I don't know if I can, no, I cannot. We're kind of between, we're working on the inventory and assessments right now, and also working on the scoping and analysis. So we're maybe a little bit ahead of that first bubble on the 21 day public comment period, but I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the Curry County portion. So why Curry County? As you know, with the Flores Lake State Natural Area Trails Investment Plan that we presented in the past, there's been several conversations around property transfers with Curry County. And in those conversations, there's a desire to really establish what are our options for property acquisitions and dispositions, really considering that, you know, does Curry County, are there better management strategies? Are there partnerships that we can make with the county to manage some of our parcels, and really looking comprehensively at the recreation needs in the county, not just specifically to say McVeigh Rock or Flores Lake. So stepping back and looking at prioritization, the current master plan is a 2003 master plan, which in master planning years is slightly young, but it is over our 20-year planning horizon. So it is time to relook and revisit at that particular plan. And some changes have happened since that 2003 master plan was completed, including acquisitions at Arizona Beach and Sisters Rock. And there's also some conversations around reconsidering the Harris Beach day use rest area. And I believe y'all, well, some of the folks who've been on the commission for a while, we toured that site last year. So all these changes necessitate, and these conversations necessitate an update to that 2003 master plan. So the project it includes 18 state park properties. It's pretty big. 2 management units, Cape Blanco and Harris Beach. 4 campgrounds, Cape Blanco, Humbug, Harris, Loeb, and then there's, just for those sticklers out there, there is a group camp, so maybe we call it 4.5 at Arizona Beach. So it's over 9,000 acres. This is a big, big endeavor. But again, it's an update. So we're not starting this from scratch. These aren't greenfield parks. It's really, you know, looking at these parks as they sit, and then looking at these new acquisitions, and then specifically looking at opportunities for partnerships. So the first step is to compile a list of preliminary issues and opportunities. So in our conversations internally and with some of our key partners so far, these are the things that are popping up as high priorities for Curry County. So you can see, you know, some of these same themes that we've been talking about today: climate adaptation, and then accessibility for recreational amenities, making sure that we have a welcoming park and welcoming areas that serve all users. And then again, that deferred maintenance and major rehab needs, natural and cultural resources, and programming, opportunities for partnership, and then staff capacity and housing. And in the climate adaptation section, I do want to make sure to say that it's not just the facilities, but also our resources. So really considering how the climate change is impacting our resources, both natural resources and cultural resources. Oh, and one other thing that came up that I think is important to point out, an additional bullet here that's come up that we forgot to include in the slide, is the safety and emergency response element for this area. Being very rural, it's a long time to get anywhere. So making sure that we're considering how people are using the parks and how we can encourage folks to use the parks more safely. So assessments, and this is our first full-blown master plan as our new team, our new and svelte team. So we're really considering, as we're completing this master plan, how do we do these assessments? Let's not just do them blindly the way that we always have. So we have an assessment of the assessments, as I keep calling it, as we are developing these assessments. So these assessments are required, again, by OAR to consider the occurrence and importance of natural and cultural resources, looking at recreational use, what's suitable, making sure that you know, we're not building things in highly sensitive areas, not proposing improvements and development in highly sensitive areas. And then also stepping back and looking at what are the recreational needs and opportunities. What do we anticipate the future demands being for recreational elements? What is the current supply from a statewide, regional, and local standpoint? What are the natural, cultural, and scenic resource management and interpretive needs of these parks? What are the adjacent lands, our impacts to them, as well as their impacts to OPRD properties? And are there opportunities for acquisitions? Again, are there opportunities for endowment properties? And then we added these 3 elements, which are climate change, accessibility, and facility conditions. So those aren't required by OARs, but in our conversations, it's definitely a priority. So we wanted to make sure we were touching on those.
So in this, is just to, so I understand this, in the assessment, you're also looking beyond current park properties to potential recreational opportunities beyond that may not be met currently?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly. We like to joke that, don't worry, we won't be looking for pickleball courts. So anticipated schedule here, again, fall and winter, which is now the beginning of fall, well, almost 3 days. We are in the scoping and analysis phase. So we are starting putting those assessments together, but we're still really in the development phase of those. And then we're going to start with some public comment later in October. And we're going to have several opportunities for public comment, including an online version, some in-person open houses in Curry County. And then we're also in looking at the data around who's using these parks. It's not a surprise to us who live in the Rogue Valley, but many of the users of these parks are coming from the Rogue Valley, actually a good percentage. So we talked about maybe doing some Rogue Valley outreach as well, and maybe even some Rogue Valley open houses. But then also looking statewide, who else is coming? This is an OPRD statewide state agency plan. So we want to make sure that we're engaging everyone.
Are you also looking at how many are coming from California?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, of course. Especially Harris, right across the border. Oops, I guess I skipped ahead. I was ahead of myself, but yes, online and in-person open houses. And then I forgot to mention the steering committee. So again, by OAR, we develop a steering committee with folks who are interested, both statewide and local issues. And we are reaching out to those folks right now to ask them to give up their precious time and give us their thoughts on the Curry County, the state parks, or the master plan for state parks in Curry County. And in the meantime, we will also start commencing the drafting again for the goals and opportunities, and then eventually development proposals, and then the natural, cultural, and scenic resource management guidelines. I did want to mention to your question, this was bothering me, when we asked about the campsite length at Champoeg, it might be 30 to 35 on average. I was like, I think that one went a little shorter. And I did also want to mention that at the very beginning of the Go Bond projects, we did an assessment and sort of a white paper on the camping needs and the trends. And that is how we came up with some of those shorter sites, that the trends are to, that looking at maybe some shorter sites, because there are not as many of those provided and there's far more use going that direction. So that's why we went that direction. So in this picture, conveniently, I had 3 examples of different camping styles at Cape Blanco. And that's definitely one of the things we're considering, like, what kind of uses are we getting? Are we getting a lot of folks who are bringing bigger vehicles? Do we need to add longer sites? Do we need to add shorter sites? Do we need to add tent camping so that we have that price point so that everybody can enjoy our state parks? And I believe that's it. Yep. So thanks, as always, for the opportunity to come and for your time. Happy to include you all in the outreach for the input, for the public input, if you want to participate in the Zoom meetings. Or in the in-person, we'd love to have you. Don't hesitate to reach out. And then I am more than happy to answer any questions and hear any feedback.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So I think this is perhaps a bit of a self-criticism, but every time I get into planning or see planning, I always wonder, are we really engaging the local community? The neighbors next to this I bet none of us have ever done planning that when we got done, somebody didn't say, I didn't know that was going on. And it might be the closest neighbor. I have no solutions, but just encouragement that if you see any way to really, truly engage, in particular the neighbors, but the local communities, I sure encourage you to do it.
Fair enough. Thanks, Commissioner Grasty. We are working with our comms folks, and then we have done direct mailers in the past. I know that Chris did a direct mailer with McVeigh, so we're considering doing that as far as the neighbors and then the local community. So for the Flores Lake Trails plan, we had 35 people show up in Langlois. So that was pretty great. And it was also an attestament to, people they do want to engage. So really thinking about how we can get that word out with the folks that we connect with. The people on our steering committee, one of the things that we'll ask them first is, hey, please help make sure that we get this word out so that we get the most participation we can. But I hear you, it's definitely always a challenge.
Yeah.
And I'm not TikTok famous, so.
I think another thing I always think about, especially in Coos and Curry County, where there's so much state BLM and Forest Service property, are those sites that they do own that are recreational being utilized to the fullest extent, or are there partnerships that we should think through going into the future of, whatever that looks like, co-management, working with them on opportunities for better usage, because we do have a lot of parks along the coastline. There are things along the Rogue River and other portions of these counties that are not necessarily being kept up at the federal government level, but could be utilized much better by locals if they were given a little attention. And so those could be potential opportunities too that we might think about.
Thank you for that. And I wrote myself a note to make sure, but that is part of our recreation assessment, is to look at all of the recreation opportunities that are current. We definitely do not want to get into the business of deciding who is the best to manage those, but we can at least talk about issues and opportunities. So I appreciate that.
Any other thoughts or comments from anybody? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I'm excited to see this happening for a lot of different reasons. We've been, it's a dynamic area, Curry County. There's a lot of change happening right now. There's some public safety concerns that have come up in recent times, and I know you'll be factoring all of that in. I also recall that we had that land exchange conversation a few years ago where we exchanged a wayside for some land along Flores Lake, and we had agreed at that time to take a broad look at the opportunities within Curry County, recreational opportunities, and some of that implied, I guess, working with the county and talking with them about shared interests and partnership possibilities. But I think I personally was excited about the idea of having this sort of broad look at Curry County. So even though it's only been 21 years since the last plan, I think it's good timing all around, and I feel good about that. So anyway, happy to see that and excited to see what comes of it. Just one small technical question. Is there going to be, do you anticipate tribal participation on the steering committee, or do you anticipate tribal participation in some other capacity within the planning process?
That's a great question. Thank you, Commissioner Dewar. Both.
Yeah.
We are asking folks to participate on the steering committee, but we also recognize that it's a burden to travel sometimes depending on where the tribe office is located. So we will be doing more of a collage approach and just trying to get participation, period. So whether that means reaching out to specific partners and having one-on-one meetings, and this goes for tribal governments as well as all of our key partners, including Curry County. Like it's not just the steering committee. We plan on having conversations with them one-on-one or in small groups as needed, for sure. Thanks, though. That's a great point.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I feel like I need to chime in too. I have a house in Curry County, and I just wanted to say, I really appreciate you taking on this effort. Curry County is a beautiful place, but the resources are so stretched down there that I know the county can't do any more than they're already doing. And yet, there's a lot of cultural resources down there, and a lot of opportunity to preserve some of these beautiful places and make sure that they're not lost. So thank you for that. And I want to say that the last time I climbed Humbug, I was really thrilled at the work that had been done. So
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Cribbins.
Thank you, Jenna. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so
Really
much.
informative. Appreciate your work on
Thank you.
this. Okay, one more item before we go to lunch. I know Commissioner Berger's hungry, so we all are. And it smells so good. So we're on 7F. This is the Fort Stevens Guardhouse Construction Contract Amendment, which is back to Rob.
Thank you. I'll try to make this quick for everybody. Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the commission. Again, my name is Rob Morris for the record, engineering lead for OPRD. And this one refers to the Fort Stevens guardhouse construction occurring under the GO bonds that Matt had presented on earlier. He showed that nice picture of all of the scaffolding around it and all the work being done. So it is well underway. A little bit of background. The Fort Stevens guardhouse project was previously approved by the commission for a construction costs not to exceed $2.9 million. Currently, the construction contract plus a few small change orders written to Bremick Construction of Portland is currently has a total of $2.72 million. So pretty close to that 2.9 that we've gotten approval for. However, as the scope continues to morph, like Matt talked about, we had a larger scope, sort of drew it back, and then are realizing there's a couple aspects of the project that we need to get done to make sure that it withstands the test of time. And what we're doing now, isn't lost to the weather in the near future. So we have desire to add back previously reduced portions of the project that will add to the overall construction price. This project will include adding back foundation waterproofing and drainage, and also a new electrical service, which will basically improve the old electrical service and be able to facilitate some HVAC renovations to basically keep the building functional and resilient. So OPRD is able to add back $500,000 to this contract by moving unused funds previously allocated to architecture and engineering services, in addition to budget reductions from other projects. So really we're, we have some savings in the project. We just need approval to up the construction contract, as it were. So prior action by the commission was approval of the construction contract not to exceed $2.9 million. The action requested is approval of the construction contract not to exceed $3.4 million, which shows that $500,000 increase.
Okay, so nobody else is gonna do it, so I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Grassi. I have a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Dewar with the second. All those in favor of approving the construction contract not to exceed $3,400,000, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, it passes and it's lunchtime. We're gonna take a 15-minute break. And then so we will, everybody should be back here 12:20. All right. Sorry, I just needed to get everybody's attention. We're gonna get going again. Sorry for those who are online. We're a few minutes late, but the lunch was delicious. We are moving on to agenda item 8A, which is a rulemaking, request to adopt Division 56, Oregon Main Street. This is with Anna, who's online.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
No, we can't hear you appropriately. 1 second.
That was very robotic. Helena, can you try talking again?
Yeah, let me try talking again. Is that better or not?
No.
No, there's a
Let
lot of.
me, let me change my audio really quick.
There you are. We just tuned you right in.
Oh, is that good?
Nope.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Hi.
Nope.
No, let's try one more. Let's see.
Now you
Is
sound
that Is that better?
No.
Katie.
My audio has been working just fine all morning.
We can hear you. There's just a lot of reverberation and feedback.
Oh, wow.
Helena, if you want to put the presentation up, I can do the speaking if you want to run through the slides.
You bet. Thanks, Katie.
For a second.
So, Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the commission, Katie Gauthier here. Sharing with Helena, agenda item 8A. So we're requesting adoption of amendments to the Oregon Main Street rules. We are amending the Main Street rules to add the Oregon Main Street into rule. We currently have rules for the grant program, but we are adding the program rules into rule. We were here in June for to open the rules, and then we went to the Oregon Main Street Network and had their network help to define what the rules should say in July, and there were some modifications. The network was supportive of having the program rules in place, and we worked with them on exactly what the program rules should say, and then opened them for public comment. So I guess we're on to that the meeting helped. We opened them for public comment. They were open for public comment from August 1st to the 30th. We did receive 3 public comments. We held a virtual public hearing and didn't receive any public comments. We did have some participants who wanted to learn more about it, but nobody wanted to provide public comment. So the request is to adopt the amendments to have the guidance for the program into rule.
Madam Chair. I request adoption of amendments to OAR 736-056-0000 to 756-056-00880 to include Oregon Main Street program into rule.
Thank you, Commissioner Berger. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Izumi. Any comments or questions before we move to a vote?
So there's nothing controversial about this at all, is there? I mean, really, just organizing where we're at. I read through it and didn't see anything that.
No, it's been a really collaborative process with the Oregon Main Street program, and Sherry Stewart, who's the program coordinator, has worked really collaboratively with the community, the groups, and it's not changing anything in the way that the program operates. It's really just putting the guidance into rule so that it's easier if there are questions to know what we're relying on to make decisions.
Thanks.
All right, any other comments? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing none, the rule is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helena.
Thanks, Katie. You're the best.
All right, now we're moving to 8B, request to adopt Division 15 rates.
Okay. So Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the commission, Katie Gauthier here with agenda item 8B, a request to adopt the amendments on rate ranges. And you may remember we were here in June to request permission to open rulemaking on the rate ranges. And we have gone through a review and research. So this proposal here today is to adjust the rate ranges due to increases in utilities, operations, maintenance, and inflation. Adjust rate ranges for day use parking permit fees, and to increase the daily rate, to apply an out-of-state surcharge to all sites rather than just RV sites. In the brief, there's additional information about the research that was done at your request on the out-of-state surcharge. And then to create some new site types for overnight sites and some select group day use facilities. I'm going to go through some of the specific rate increases and a little bit of the background, and happy to take any questions as this moves forward. So as we discussed in the proposal to open, ORS 390.124.2A allows the commission to adopt rate ranges. And then within that, the director may change fees up to 4 times per year. This was adopted by the legislature in 2017. In the rate ranges were first adopted in 2018 and implemented in the budget in 2019. And this is the first time we've changed those rate ranges since that time. The fees are nearing the top of the rate ranges in some areas, and in some areas they're not. So the proposed changes look at those and make changes to the top of the ranges in some areas and reflect the needs that we have based on changes to inflation, costs for operation and maintenance, and with the utilities, and with the goal of trying to make our rate ranges last around 3 biennium, but we'll continue to evaluate that as time moves forward. So we changed the table a little bit from the last time that you saw it, looking specifically at the proposed ranges for out-of-state visitors. In the first 2 rows, the full and electric hookups, those are currently charged based on statutory requirements. So the first column is our current rate. The green is the current range that we're authorized to charge within, and then the proposed range would be in yellow if you approve the proposed rules, and the blue is the 25% increase for out-of-state visitors. And the new site type is the second from the bottom row, the mini cabins. And those are the ones that have microwaves that but don't have as many people can stay in them. So they have refrigerators and microwaves. And the horse sites, we would have the same rates as non-horse sites.
What exactly is a horse site?
It's a site that has a space for a corral for a pack animal, and they require that a pack animal is included. So you have to have a pack animal camping with you. So a horse,
Can't put your kids in there.
yeah, no, we're very specific that you have to camp with a pack animal. Horses, llamas, alpacas,
Yeah.
those
Okay.
sorts of things.
And a horse group site is just a whole bunch of corrals?
Yeah. We
And
work
are-
with some of the groups and they have been very helpful in building some of those sites, and they're very popular.
Do we have a lot of them? Blanco?
Do we get a?
We do.
Yeah.
We have a lot of them.
In certain camp areas, they're very popular among people who have pack animals.
Were those also part of the statutory 25%?
If they have an RV site, they are.
If they, meaning the campsite or the campground?
If the campsite, so we have horse RV sites, so if they had an RV hookup, then we charged out-of-state people 25% more. But if they were only a tent site, so they didn't have RV hookups, then we did not charge. So basically, we charge the same rate, but they include a paddock for pack animals, and they are required to have a pack animal.
There's a reason for my asking on this, and now's as good a time to mention it as any. I understand if we statutorily are going to 25%, then you gotta hit the numbers, but really, $107.50, why, what's that 50 cents? And $101.25?
Convenience fee.
That's just more numbers that somebody's inputting into something. and
So
I-
that is the 25%. And then we add a transient lodging tax that will add, but we round to the nearest dollar. So when the visitor actually pays a rate, it will be to the nearest whole dollar.
Okay, thank you. I feel better about that, because that just seemed.
Rangers.
Because that just, it's so annoying to be adding point whatever to, yeah, thank you for that.
Yes, so once they get the transient lodging tax, whatever that rate is, so each county has a different lodging tax.
This is like a not to exceed number,
Well, the lodging tax is added on top of.
right? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Do you have any comparison of like what it costs to camp at other parks? I mean, I see your range and what you're proposing and stuff, but when you go to like the county campgrounds and so forth like that, are we in range with them or?
We do, we're in the range with county campgrounds. They look at our rates and put their rates similar to ours. We look at rates from other areas. Private campgrounds are typically more expensive. And based on amenities, sometimes parks with less amenities are less expensive. So we evaluate them, but we did not do a rate study completely.
Back on that first slide, I think the very first slide, you had the full hookup camp site at the new proposed range is $33 to $52. Now, as a guy who camps a lot, I understand these numbers very well. And to me, I mean, those numbers are doable. I think that they're right in the middle of the range right there. So, but that out of state range, well, whenever I go out of state, I really get dinged. And like, I went up to Pullman, Washington last year, and the county had a fee on top of that. And then I was on the campus of Washington State, so they had a fee on top of that. So by the time I camped for one night, it was $87 a night. I mean, just absolutely ridiculous. So I like these numbers.
We did hear a lot of that, and our county partners have really urged us to do this because they can't move until we move, and the costs to operate are so exponential that they really need us to move there. And the other states, I mean, we've heard, was Idaho, I think, where it's like double. I mean, and we also don't want to be that unfriendly either to people, but at the same time, it seems very reasonable compared to the amenities we offer based on other state parks and larger county operations.
Some of our commenters didn't agree, but.
Does this also include the dump fees? Are they included in this or is that separate?
We don't charge a dump fee for any of our parks.
It's included.
Has it ever been discussed? I mean, I'm new to the board here, but everywhere I go now, everybody's charging for dump fees.
We could, I mean,
It's a
I
huge
don't-
revenue generator.
we're just one of those that it's like, I hate when you fly in an airline and it's like, oh, it's $150 and then you buy your seatbelt and then you buy your seat and then you buy your luggage and I get it. It's just one more thing to manage and another vendor to manage. So we certainly could look at it. But like KOA, it's you gotta do you get your campsite, then if you want a picnic table, it's more. If you want a fire ring, it's more. If you want, it's a lot.
Spirit Airlines.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mm.
Right, and then people won't, so, yeah.
Go ahead, Commissioner Zoom.
Yeah, so I'm wondering about oh wait, did you just change that slide?
I went backwards.
Okay.
There was a question. I go back to the.
Oh,
yes,
can you,
there we
okay,
go.
yeah. I'm wondering, why the hiker, boater, bicycle campsite is charged per person. I'm noticing that some of these other state park systems charge per vehicle or per site, and I'm just surprised that it's charged per camper, and especially when like group tent is not charged per camper or a cabin is not charged per person, and so people, is there a greater cost? I mean, I guess there's like a greater maybe like utilities or bathroom maintenance cost if there's more people, but families that have like larger families or multi-generational families getting together, they would be paying more for one site.
Yeah, it's a really unique site type that is
Oh, okay.
meant for people who don't have a vehicle and are like if they're hiking through a place, they would stay in this site type where they camp in a special area that they have a space and we have multiple spaces there. And so it's a smaller space and it's per person in that special area. And so it's really meant for people who are like bicycling through or they're hiking through and they don't have a vehicle, and it's a lower cost option for people who are going through an area.
Oh, I
And
see.
so all of our other sites are a site
Per
per
site,
site, and we
okay.
have up to 8 people in a site, unless they're the group ones, and then they
Right.
are a
Okay,
group
that
rate.
makes
But
sense.
this is just a unique site type for people who are offering a different type of amenity and a different type of experience.
Okay, and then what is the cost for a just campsite with one car and a tent?
So that was back here. And for a tent one, it would be.
Oh, I see it, tent campsite, or,
Currently, it's between 17 and 22, and it would go up from the 21 to 29.
okay, and then primitive campsite also has a tent.
Right,
is
the
that right?
primitive tent sites don't have the water and restroom facilities that are close. They're usually our vault toilet restrooms, and they may not have water.
Got it, okay, thank you very much.
Go ahead, Commissioner Grasty.
So I very much think we need to do this and gonna support it, but I have to say with the focus that we've had in the last several years about underserved communities, low income, minorities in some cases, this puts them we're no longer supporting them whatsoever. I can tell you last weekend, I went camping and in a BLM campground and had a vault toilet and had a picnic table, had a fire ring that you couldn't use, of course. And the fee was $0. I've also been on Forest Service campgrounds in the last 2 weeks that the fee was $8, and then I have a senior card, so I got it for half that. I'm not sure how we keep thinking about serving the low income, the underserved. But it's going to take something different than this to make it happen. So, I'm of an age now where I think senior discounts are a good thing. So is that too.
Commissioner Dewar.
I was going to say basically what Commissioner Grasty just said. I do support this and understand the need. And I think that when we talked about this before, I had expressed some concern about low-income Oregonians. And in some ways, we've responded well to the Oregonians part of that phrase. And I appreciate that because it seems appropriate. But I do continue to wonder about the fate of those people who are low income. I don't want to put these experiences that we offer through state parks out of the reach of low income people and families. So I guess I'll just say I'm eager to see us continue to think creatively about how to do that.
Yeah.
And it may have to require some creative thinking that goes a little bit beyond these immediate decisions. But I want to just put that out there as well, that whatever options we can envision in the future to allow us to respond to that. But a technical question, I know that you said we have director discretion for changes to fee structure. And this is kind of a weird technical question, but does that mean like the entire table changes, or does the director have the discretion to go in and say like these 4 parks specifically need a change because of some unique circumstances?
It's both of those things. It can be a park by park or a site by site type by site type. It could be either of those. And we've used it for both of those types of.
So it's a broad discretion 4
Yes.
times a year.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Do you want to talk about the?
I was gonna say, if you
affordability?
wanted practice, I'll let you.
It is, I mean, I can start and then I'm sure you get.
Go ahead.
The balance and the ability, I mean, we're all concerned about affordability and access to individuals in underserved communities and want to try to do that in whatever ways we can. But it's the balance of being able to be sustainable and keep our parks open. And so trying to figure out that balance and making sure that we can continue to operate. So we have long tried to keep fees as low as possible so that we can, anything we do in a discount program comes on the backs of the rest of the people who are paying for the services. So trying to maintain that balance. But I mean, it is something that we're going to have to continue to struggle with and continue to look at as our fees
It's an
increase.
inherently different problem.
And then, go ahead, Commissioner Berger.
I hate to be this person that gives history, but my first meeting of the parks, or a very early one, I was just fell on the floor when I was told that our rates are in statute or in rule, all locked in. And one of the first things that I thought was important that we did when I got on this commission was get a range and get flexibility, because if there's anything we need out there in the natural world, it's flexibility. I don't think there's a perfect here. But we're a long ways from where we were 8 years ago in terms of giving options that fit the circumstances for this. And I probably would charge out-of-staters more. But that's just an attitude, not necessarily a policy. Just saying. So I really think we've come a long ways with this. I wish it could be perfect.
Did you have more that you wanted to?
You guys have covered it perfectly. It's a challenge.
so.
I mean, and it's one of those, we had the conversation a couple months ago around our budget, right? And the need for a different revenue stream. There is no general fund that comes into the agency, and relying on lottery proceeds and user fees to run a state park system and keep it affordable and accessible is a challenge. But I do want to point out that we do waive a lot of fees, and we do partner with a lot of different groups to try to introduce folks into the outdoors. So we still maintain that flexibility. Our foster and adoptive families, our veterans pass. I know you want senior passes, but the more passes we do and we waive, again, that creates the balance gets out of imbalance again. So it's a very interesting problem to solve, but thanks to all of you, we do have the flexibility in our flex fees now. And we're really talking internally about how do we schedule these so they're more regular and more keeping up with inflationary, because waiting even 3 years is just not a good strategy either. So we get it, we feel it, we're doing everything we can and trying to keep them in balance, but also don't want to have to start closing parks and laying off people and not having resources available.
Commissioner Cribbins, did you have a comment?
I do. I just wanted to say that being a former county commissioner, I appreciate the comment about the counties really are waiting for the states for the state to raise their rates, because we would do it all the time, sit down before fee hearings and review what the comps were in the area. The state is the largest comparable. And people are price sensitive. Oddly, even people that have a couple $100,000 that they're pulling into the park. And because we see that a lot on the coast, people with full trailers of ATVs and big, toy haulers and all that. So everybody needs to keep all their rates in line. And if we, if we're not raising our rates, then eventually we get to the position where we can't serve anybody. So it's never fun, but it's an important part of what we do.
Go ahead, Commissioner Zuni.
I also understand the need to increase rates. I'm wondering about this line in here where you talk about if, like, continuing to evaluate accessibility and affordability as rate changes are implemented. I'm wondering if there is like a specific plan for doing that, and then if there is a need to change, does that mean that we need to open rulemaking again? Or is there more flexibility built in?
There's always flexibility to lower rates. The director can go
Anytime.
Okay.
lower anytime that we have flexibility to go lower, and flexibility to provide discounts is always there. So it's going to be a continual process of evaluation. We have a revenue analyst and a market analyst who looks at our occupancy data and our reservation data to evaluate, are we seeing differences in when people are reserving? Are we seeing more cancellations and are changes in those types of things, or where people are camping? And some of that information helps us to evaluate, are people being more price sensitive? And a lot of times it's really a lot of other things that are causing people to change their camping behavior besides their, and you'll see as we go through a little bit, and in some of the information that was included in the packet, when we did a broader survey, the price of a campsite matters, but it's the overall price of their trip. And it's, I mean, there's gas prices and there's weather, and there's so many other factors that go into a consideration about where to camp and when to camp. So this is a consideration, but it's a bigger issue, bigger concern, or bigger picture.
So if it's all right, I gotta add to that as I try and drive through the state parks as I'm around and going by them. And I look at this and think how much money this is, and then drive through a state park where every campsite has a pickup and a trailer has a value of $150,000 to $250,000 campsite after campsite, and think this doesn't look like much. But
Right.
it's not the reality for everybody.
That's true. And the tables, to be really, really fair, I mean, the tables do weight in the direction of those higher costs. The capital intensive forms of recreation being have higher fees and out of state people as well. So it is supporting at that lower level. So it does balance out. It's just it's always an awkward balance. There's no perfect tipping.
So if we continue, you saw these last time, the changes in picnic rates and addition of a picnic shelter for the picnic shelters that have water and electricity included. Shampooey Pavilion, you're actually getting 2 buildings instead of just one, so we kind of combined those rates. The Shore Acres, there was a question last time about how long the rental is, and it's oftentimes people only use it for a half a day, but we rent it by the day. So you're getting we only rent it once per day in that area. But this is just changing wording on packages. And then the amenities, we didn't make any changes from what was proposed in the rules when we talked about them. And the day use parking permit fee changes for the daily rate. The current rate is $5. The rate range would go from 7 to 15. The 12-month annual pass is currently $30. The rate range would go from 30 to 60. And the 24-month annual pass is currently $50. The range would go from $50 to $80.
What?
So this is and then
Question.
Yeah, how does that work if You said you could change, there's authority to change these how frequently?
4 times a year.
4 times a year. Does that include the monthly passes? I mean, if you bought one in December, it's one cost, and if you bought one in January, it's another cost, or is that?
You, you get it for 12, you click it at. there's
At
a-
12 months, and
it's
it
12
goes
months, yeah.
12
So
months.
actually in December, we do have it's $5 off. We offer a sale in December, so you do get a discount in December.
Okay, so it's again, just the range.
Right, but we would set a rate for the year that it.
I,
would
I
be.
guess I'm asking that you do that, that it be kind of a little less changeable in this
Yes, we wouldn't anticipate that we would change it multiple times in a year.
4 times a year.
You gave us that flexibility, but I cannot see where we would.
I
change
can't
the-
either. Thank you. Okay.
We have to sign it at every park and put it into the machines, and there's some logistical challenges
Yeah,
that would make
right.
our
Make
staff
it
not
difficult.
happy if we were to do that.
What were the comments about the day use range increases compared to like camping?
I don't know that we had different comments I mean, there were concerns about day use fees. We had some comments specifically around the idea on the coast of specifically having sites charge a day use fee and about access for a fee, but I don't know that we had specific comments about an increase in what the increase would be. Generally just, the comments were generally not liking an increase, but not specific of this increase versus that increase.
Go ahead.
Did you skip over the part about the extra vehicle fee?
I put it up there, but
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't really specifically.
My point I wanted to make on this is if we talk about some of the lesser served or the lower income folks who like to camp, this is where you really hit them. Because a lot of folks will have this $250,000 motor home or a big toy hauler out there, and they invite their friends to come out, or their children and grandchildren and stuff like that. And this is where they get dinged. So this is one way to really hurt them, is that extra vehicle and campground. So most of us, like my RV, I'm pulling a vehicle, it fits in there with it. I'm not paying for an extra, but that's just something I've noticed as a user of the camp, and I see some of the folks come in, and there's your lower income that are just coming into the extra vehicle to camp with friends and family.
Yeah, that is a fee that hasn't gone up for a number of years. And one that our staff had found is often difficult there's a little bit more staff intensity to collect that fee. And so the idea of moving it to a $10 fee provides an opportunity for.
So because I saw this happen and I look at this and I'm still confused by it. The second category there, the extra motorcycle. So if 2 guys are together, we're charging for 1.
Mhm.
And if 3 are together, we're charging
For 2.
for 2. And if 4 are together, we're charging for 2.
Yes, but we wouldn't charge for the first 2
They're in the site.
because they're in the site. I should look to my staff and make sure I'm.
Well, I pulled into at the mouth of the Deschutes River, and there were 6 or 8 guys pulled in on motorcycles, and they were completely baffled. And I will tell you, as good as the staff was there, she couldn't really explain what it was. There's a lot of confusion. And then the Wi-Fi didn't work.
And the way that rule is interpreted, it hasn't changed. It's just the rate range that's new. But it's
Still
only the
confusing.
extra vehicle.
Yeah, it's still confusing.
Just more
But-
expensively.
Yes. I will get clarity on that one and let you know.
You get 4 wheels.
I don't need to know, it was just. we got
Staff
some
does.
staff that need some help.
Yes, that's a good one.
I'm wondering, did you consider out-of-state fees for some of these other extras? One thing I'm thinking about is the group facilities. like, you know, renting out Shampooey Pavilion for a wedding or something out of state. Is that an area where, just trying to grasp straws here and think about revenue sources? I mean, if we're, you know, I'm just, the question is really, did you consider out of state surcharge for any of these other?
We didn't
Fees.
put them on the, we put them on the campsites. We didn't put them on the buildings, but we could. Yeah, there's no reason that they couldn't be on the buildings.
I think destination weddings and such are really popular and, you know, it would be nice if, you know, Oregonians didn't have to pay for California destination wedding.
Could we just do that?
Could do that, but since we're considering keeping parts of the rule open, you could include that in what you brought back after you've looked into it.
Okay.
That would be,
Redo it again.
I think you could make the same motion, give that direction, adopt it today, and then maybe adopt a revised at a future date
For that portion.
for that
Mhm.
specific rate. If you chose to do so.
It is harder with a building to capture, I think you were saying that, Commissioner Condor, to capture an out-of-state reservation versus a vehicle that has an out-of-state plate, but I don't know
Well,
if there's a way.
I think it'll be the same because most people do them online.
Yeah,
And
that's
so, I mean, we're not also, well, I'm not gonna say
Yeah.
that out loud, but
Yeah.
they all know what they need to do if they don't want to pay the fee.
Right, exactly.
A nearby town and stealing your license plate.
There you go.
We will not be licensed plate police.
So we can do rule or put that one in there. Okay. Yeah.
Thoughts or comments? on that?
The days parking, I'll just go through this really quickly, the general, and this is all in your packet, general comments. The themes that people were concerned about were affordability, fairness, and accessibility. Affordability, they were concerned about, just as you all were, the financial burden, and the people who were supporting were supportive of the sustainability for parks and that they thought it was still less than they pay when they go camping in other places. For fairness and equity, they were concerned about the impacts to the underserved and public access. There's still a perception that taxes pay for parks, but wanting to make sure that we have sustainable long-term public access. Accessibility, thoughts that maybe there should be more discounts and access for vulnerable populations. And wanting, people who are supporting want to make sure that there's accessible resources. So in the out-of-state surcharge, we did ask that specifically in a survey and there was pretty strong support for out-of-state surcharge, particularly among Oregonians. So the request is as follows with the addition, if you want to ask us to further take comment on adding the out-of-state surcharge to group facilities. Which would be
which one is it?
Of the rule. Yeah, which section of the?
Which section is it in?
it's in, let's see which rule that is.
I'm worried because our attorney is looking concerned.
No,
I
no.
just can't find which
If
one
we
it's
could
in.
find
It's
it,
in 40.
what is it part of?
1540. It's the miscellaneous,
Yeah, it's the
miscellaneous rental products. Yeah, that's,
40, is it
No.
all of 40 or just part of 40?
it's
That's a
not
good question.
40 either. Some of it's in 40.
Some of it's
Yeah.
40, but.
Isn't it 9, 10, 11, 12?
Just that piece?
well, it's 40 and it's in. I guess it's all 40. Yeah, I think it's all in 40.
9, 10, 11, and 12.
Would you distinguish that though to just 9, 10, 11, and 12 instead of holding all of 40
Yeah,
open?
right. Close the
Yeah,
others.
close the others.
Okay, I got it.
Yes,
Got it.
that'd be great.
Katie in here. On the list that's up there, I don't see the definition rule listed. Is that,
We didn't make any changes to it.
thought we defined campsite? Are we? There's.
Oh, we did.
there's-
Okay,
there's-
sorry. Yes, we need 6.
6 needs to be added.
No, it's on that one.
It's on the one you wrote?
Yeah.
We have it.
We got it.
Yep, we're
Okay,
good.
We got it.
good. I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't a change there.
And with regard to this and this for consideration for further amendments. Okay.
Do we have any other comments before we move on to a motion? Any other thoughts or? One thing I did want to flag too, and I know this goes hand in hand. You guys have done a really great job on this, and I know that it's always hard to raise fees because, you know, people are paying more money and this is their vacation and nobody wants to be hindered by the chance they can't camp because it is expensive, but you know, I think our staff and Lisa certainly do take that into consideration and are very conscious about that and making sure that camping and access to our state parks and facilities is as accessible as we can make it. And we'll keep striving to do better and do more. Particularly, I want us to think through a little bit more too about people with disabilities and who often can't use tent sites and have to use RV sites, and that cost is expensive. And sometimes people are on more fixed incomes who are at those rates. So if there's things we can think through about how to maybe reduce that burden for that set of population too, that'd be helpful to think through too. But this is important and we need to pay for things. So with that, I think I would entertain a motion if I have one.
You can go to sleep now. Okay,
Pay attention, Gypsy.
I move that I move that the commission adopt amendments to the following rules. OAR 736-015-0006, OAR 736-015-0020, OAR 736-015-0026, OAR 736-015-0030, except under OAR 736-015-0030, Section 6 is accepted. And OAR, yeah, or 736-015-0040, except under OAR 736-015-0040, sections 9, 10, 11, and 12, which we are leaving open, and also OAR 736-015-0043, and continue making rulemaking with regards to OAR 736-015-0030 sub 6 and OAR 736-015-0040 sections 9, 10, 11, and 12 for consideration of further amendments.
I'll second. I don't want you to do all the hard work.
Being abused.
Vince, the second.
The only thing I hope is that
Do you want me to?
tape recorder does not fail.
They gave me a job, man, I can handle it.
You're all over.
Read some numbers.
Well, thank you. Okay, with that, I'm going to take a vote. So all of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Any abstentions? Okay, hearing none, it passes. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for the hard work and thoughtful comments from the public on this as well. Yeah, thank you. Now we're going reports, and that take a look at. Anything you want to mention?
Yeah.
All right. So with that, I think we're wrapping up this meeting.
Your commission planning calendar, real quick, you're not voting on it today, but if you can make sure you take a look and let us know between now and November when you approve it, whether those dates are gonna work for you or not. Thank you for letting me know where it might, but if you can just double check that and make sure you're ready and let us know before November so we can get everybody else's schedules aligned if you can't. It's the very last page.
You're not going to carry it.
No, 25. This, well,
She's got.
until I get replaced.
Oh, you may not be replaceable. You might, you guys might have to stay around.
Well,
You leap over the 25th.
does anybody have any other thoughts or comments for the good of the order? All right, hearing none.